That enormous entity was a giant toad, and its body was semi-translucent. After devouring Longchen, its body became dark green. The heaven-devouring toad is a descendant of the ancient divine heaven-devouring beast. It contains its own world inside of it. Once someone is swallowed, there's no way for them to escape. Cried someone. The heaven-devouring beast only existed within legends and myths. The legends spoke of a beast in the divine world capable of swallowing the sun, moon, and stars, as well as devils and gods. It was called the heaven-devouring beast. As for the heaven-devouring toad, it was originally just a magical beast, but due to a battle between divine beasts, it had swallowed a drop of the heaven-devouring beast's blood, resulting in a mutant that possessed the blood of a divine beast. Although the heaven-devouring toad was not as frightening as the heaven-devouring beast, it still possessed its own world within its body. It couldn't devour the sun and moon, but the world inside it was known as the blood domain prison. It existed to devour. Any magical beast sucked into its internal world would find itself in an endless sea of blood. That sea of blood was the heaven-devouring beast's digestive juices. Even a divine item would be digested by those corrosive juices, let alone the physical body. The heaven-devouring toad was similar to the cloud-chasing heaven-swallowing sparrow race in that they both possessed a trace of the heaven-swallowing beast's blood. However, in comparison, the heaven-swallowing toad's intelligence was much lower. It was more like magical beasts rather than a Xian beast. Due to how great of a threat they posed, it was said that the experts of that time had banded together to make them extinct. Unexpectedly, one had appeared here. Furthermore, its aura was extremely powerful. It was at the peak of the 12th rank. This was a monster of nightmares that horrified people. It was different from the cloud-chasing heaven-swallowing sparrow race in that its devouring ability trapped people in a prison. For the cloud-chasing heaven-swallowing sparrow race, what was swallowed would be instantly annihilated in its stomach. But the heaven-swallowing toad's stomach was said to slowly corrode anyone who entered. Supposedly, it was a slow torture of pain, terror, and despair. Ye Yaochen jumped onto the heaven-swallowing toad's back. He placed a hand on its head and sent a rune into its body. Longchen, I won't let you die so easily. Ye Yaochen smiled cruelly. Longchen had many secrets, so it would be too regretful if he simply died. This heaven-swallowing toad was Ye Yaocheng's steed. Due to its low intelligence, he had to send this rune in to control the prison and make sure Longchen wasn't killed. He had the utmost confidence in this steed of his. This heaven-swallowing toad had been raised with the full resources of his family. The amount that had been spent was unimaginable. It might even be more than what had been spent on him. Even a fourth-step nether passage expert wouldn't be able to escape upon being swallowed. It was his strongest trump card, and even within the divine families, only a few people knew this secret. Today, he had exposed it to great effect. Suddenly, two large bubbles bulged out of its cheeks. The void rumbled. Blood-colored runes appeared all over its body, turning its dark green body red. At the same time, its body began to inflate. What? Ye Yaochen was startled. He had never seen such a thing happen to the heaven-swallowing toad. It transmitted its feeling of terror, but its thoughts were too muddled for him to understand what it was saying. Not good. Seeing cracks appear in its skin, Ye Yaochen immediately jumped off and fled. Boom. The giant heaven-swallowing toad had inflated to the point that it was 10 times its original size when it finally exploded. Flames exploded out of it, turning the surroundings into a sea of flames. The heaven-swallowing toad's corpse was incinerated into nothingness. Within the dancing flames stood a figure with a black saber. The intense flames were gentle in front of him. They were like a cool breeze blowing back his clothes and hair. You actually sent out a toad to die? Ye Yaochen, has your silly ass run out of tricks? Asked Longchen. Longchen had also been badly frightened upon being swallowed. He had entered a world that was a sea of blood. When he entered, the sea of blood had transformed into countless strange beasts that pounced on him. The corrosive power of that blood had made his heart shake. The worst thing was that world's laws were strange, giving Longchen a feeling that he wouldn't be able to leave no matter how strong he was. However, when he used the World Extermination Flame Lotus and activated the Nirvana scripture, he found that even within this strange world, the Nirvana scriptures still worked. Endless flame energy had gathered toward him. What Longchen didn't know was that the flame energy he was drawing out wasn't from the martial heaven continent. It was also from this strange world, and as a result, when the World Extermination Flame Lotus fell, that entire world's laws were shattered. It had inflated until it had exploded. "Bastard, what did you do?" roared Ye Yaochen. The steed he had nourished with his blood and sweat had been killed. Just at that moment, Longchen came charging at him, unleashing a simple slash of his saber. Due to the distraction, Ye Yaochen used his soul to lock him down. Ye Yaocheng's expression changed. The opening from the death of his heaven-swallowing toad had been grasped by Longchen. He barely managed to raise his sword but was blown back, coughing up blood. In a clash between experts, a single opening was enough to decide victory or defeat. Suddenly, the space behind Longchen rumbled, and lightning spears shot toward him. Pengzi had returned. Just now, Ye Yaochen had saved Pengzi. Seeing him in trouble, Pengzi came to disturb Longchen. It wasn't due to how loyal he was, but that they had no choice but to join forces. A blood-colored spear also tore through the void, bringing with it the cries of ghosts. That spear was like a curse from hell. A chill filled the air. The only one capable of unleashing such an evil curse attack was Tian Xiezi. Tian Xiezi wasn't planning on just watching as the most powerful experts fought. He also unleashed his strongest trump card. At the same time, a giant figure appeared in the air. It was an emperor with a golden crown. Another spear pierced toward Longchen, as Devouring had also made his move. He stood in the head of the giant emperor and merged with the blood emperor, unleashing immense pressure. Pengzi, Tian Xiezi, and Devouring unleashed their strongest attacks. As for Ye Yaochen, who had been retreating, he let out a cry and came to a sudden stop. He spat a mouthful of blood onto this sword, causing wriggling blood runes to appear over it. Blood sacrifice, life-devouring slash. Ye Yaocheng's sword slashed out along with the attacks from the other three. Even if you join forces, so what? Other than the sovereigns, have I ever been afraid of anyone in the same realm? Longchen shouted. His 108,000 astral spaces all sent a stream of life and death energy to his Nethergate star. The Nethergate star shuddered, linking all that power. At the same time, the Fengfu, Alioth, Life Fate, Enlightenment Palace, and Divine Gate stars lit up. All of Longchen's power streamed into Evil Moon. Evil Moon shook intensely multiple times. It was like one shackle after another inside of its body was being broken. Its power crazily climbed. There's finally enough power. Longchen, no need to use Split the Heavens, I'll teach you the peerless technique of my evil dragon race. Evil Moon cried out excitedly. An evil aura caused the world to shake. Evil Dragon executes the heavens. Suddenly, Longchen and Evil Moon let out an identical roar. The void exploded as a giant saber image sword. That saber image was like a giant dragon's tail, as well as a crescent fang. Tian Xiezi, Kunpeng, Devouring, and Ye Yaocheng's attacks instantly exploded. Huge ripples spread in every direction. All five of them were sent flying. Tian Xiezi's spear shattered, Kunpeng's lightning halberd vanished, and Devouring's blood emperor figure disintegrated. They began hacking up blood, and their foreheads split open. Ye Yaocheng's sword was broken, with its fragments stabbing his body. This had been a collision capable of shaking the world. The ripples even affected the entire battlefield to the point that countless experts were blown far into the distance and badly injured. The chaotic battle came to a stop because there was no way to continue fighting. Everyone had to focus on staying alive, and they fled for their lives in the face of those shockwaves. As they retreated, they saw four wretched figures within the distorted space. Where's Longchen? People cried out, unable to see the fifth figure that they had just seen. Young master, watch out. Suddenly, the Kunpeng race's experts let out heart-rending cries. They had noticed a figure with a black saber suddenly appear behind Kunpengzi. When they saw that figure, every expert of the Xian beasts froze in horror. Before Pengzi could react, that sinister black saber stabbed through his back. Evil moon pierced through Pengzi's body. Wrapped in black qi, it was like an evil dragon's toxic fang, devouring Pengzi's life. Young master! The Kunpeng race's experts along with the rest of the Xian beasts cried out. Pengzi was the descendant of the Peng Emperor and the hope of the Xian beasts. All their hearts sank. Long Chen, if you dare dash, roared Peng Wanli. Evil moon shook ever so slightly and Pengzi exploded. In that instant, a translucent figure shot out. That was his Yuan spirit. However, just as it fled, Long Chen's saber fell, instantly blasting the Yuan spirit into specks of light that slowly dissipated. A peerless genius of his generation, descendant and heir of the Peng Emperor, a monster that had been sealed in the ancient era, the heavenly genius shouldering the hopes and dreams of the Kunpeng race and the Xian beasts, died. Seeing those specks of light slowly fade, shock filled everyone. Pengzi had been killed. Pengzi was an expert blessed with immense karmic luck, someone who had the blessing and protection of the heavenly Daos. Such a figure rarely died. Even when encountering experts stronger than themselves, the protection of the heavenly Daos would allow them to escape with their lives. But Pengzi had still been killed by Long Chen. A wave of mournful cries came from the Xian beasts. That one blow from Long Chen had severed any hopes of the Xian beasts rising. That was satisfying. Let's continue. Evil Moon cried out excitedly, its killing intent even stronger than Long Chen's. Perhaps it had been sealed for so long that its urges now exploded. It had an urge to slaughter the entire world. Long Chen rushed toward Ye Yaochen, who had already lost his mind out of fear. Of the four, Pengzi had been closest, so he was the first unlucky target. As for Ye Yaochen, he had become the second. Seeing Long Chen charging over with such killing intent, Ye Yaochen finally revealed a look of terror. The previous exchange had badly wounded him, and he had yet to recover. Long Chen's attack just now had not only broken their combined attacks but also their confidence, leading them to no longer have the courage to keep fighting. Ye Yaochen took out a soul-calming jade that made Long Chen's pupils shrink. It didn't have the same design and color as his, but the fluctuations coming from it were definitely the same. The design was different, but it also had 9 lines, making it a 9-line soul-calming jade. Ye Yaochen was about to crush it. An invisible wind blade silently slashed down, cutting off his arm before he could crush his soul-calming jade. Tang Wan'er appeared. That wind blade came from the priceless treasure that Leng Yuan had given her. It was perfectly suited to her cultivation technique, and she was able to use it to sneak up on Ye Yaochen without anyone noticing. Ye Yaocheng's expression changed. Before he could grab the jade back, Evil Moon arrived, so he could only raise his broken sword. Ye Yaocheng's divine sword was easily sliced through, and Evil Moon cut through his ribs. Ye Yaochen had been cut in two. As his weapon was broken and his body was crippled, he despaired. Long Chen, release our commander or the Heavenly Dragon Legion will annihilate your Dragon Blood Legion. The warriors of the Heavenly Dragon Legion tried to charge over, but the Dragon Blood Legion stopped them. Their crazy charge only resulted in deaths and injuries amongst themselves, with not one person managing to get by. Annihilate the Dragon Blood Legion? How about we annihilate you first? Sneered Guoran. Although the other side was composed of third-step Nether Passage experts, in terms of combat power, 10,000 against 10,000, the Dragon Blood warriors were completely suppressing them. Almost 2,000 deaths had appeared amongst the Heavenly Dragon Legion, yet they dared to threaten the Dragon Blood Legion? At this time, Di Feng and Tian Xiezi were dumbfounded. Pengzi was dead and Ye Yaochen was crippled. Theoretically, they should charge forward to run interference and give Ye Yaochen a chance to recover. However, they were already defeated. Despite knowing what they should do, they didn't dare to. A desire to flee began to rise within them. After cutting Ye Yaochen in half, Evil Moon didn't stop. Long Chen stabbed Evil Moon straight for Ye Yaocheng's head. Someone like Ye Yaochen had to be eliminated. At such a young age, you're already so vicious, with no sense of mercy. Can someone like you lead the people against the foreign invaders? Just at that moment, an icy snort rang out. Although it was just a snort, the sound covered up the commotion of the battlefield. A hand reached out of midair toward Long Chen. In that instant, the world froze and every expert stopped moving. It wasn't that they didn't want to move, but that they couldn't. Every fluctuation seemed to repeat itself, as if the laws of heaven and earth had changed. This was the samsara power of a fourth-step nether passage expert. Everyone knew that only someone capable of controlling samsara power could forcibly change the laws of heaven and earth. Only now did they see an elder with a white beard appear in front of Long Chen. His face was covered in wrinkles, and it was extremely grave. The strange sight of his hand appearing first, and only then noticing him showed that his power was affecting their senses. The elder's hand reached toward Long Chen's throat. Life and death energy manifested in his eyes. It was as if the world was under his control. Even Long Chen felt that his body was frozen. However, despite that, Long Chen still sneered, "What does my viciousness have to do with you? Are you another bastard from the same hole as this one?" The elder seemed to be the master of life and death. Killing intent sparked within his eyes because of Long Chen's words. "Little brat, it seems your parents never taught you manners. I'll teach you in their place." Brilliant light exploded from his hand. However, just as it was about to touch Long Chen's throat, a giant figure appeared behind him. A bone club viciously slammed into the back of his head. People recognized that giant figure. It was Wild. He had actually managed to silently sneak up on this elder. A resounding explosive sound rang out, and the frozen world instantly became undone. The laws of the world returned to normal. However, shockingly, even though Wild's club had smashed into the back of the elder's head, that elder's head didn't explode. Those familiar with Wild knew that his physical strength was even greater than Long Chen's, so were the heads of fourth-step nether passage experts really that hard? Although his head didn't explode, his scalp was split open. Long Chen saw a ring of light around Wild's club, blocking it. Most likely this was an instinctual defense. A fourth-step nether passage expert seemed to possess an instinctual reaction to any danger. However, even if this club wasn't enough to kill him, it did make the elder dizzy. Long Chen took advantage of that. With the space around him unfrozen, he raised a hand and smacked the elder in the face, sending him flying. After that, his hand was quick as lightning, grabbing Ye Yaocheng's throat. Only then did the elder recover. Seeing the odd gazes of countless experts, he shuddered from rage. "Long Chen, you are courting death," he roared. He hadn't been planning on killing Long Chen and only wanted to suppress him. However, who would have expected that someone had been hiding within the void? Caught off guard, he was actually slapped in the face. "Old fellow, you're the one courting death. Last time didn't count. Let me try again and see if your head is really so hard," demanded Wild. Wild was different from the Dragon Blood warriors. He didn't have any realms or tribulations to go through. He also didn't have any of the aura of a cultivator. Moreover, he was not affected by any restrictions or suppressions of the heavenly Daos. Guoran had once said that if he made an invisibility cloak for Wild, he might be an even better assassin than Dong Mingyu. That little joke by Guoran was remembered by Xiaochen. He had specially made a special belt that could conceal Wild within the void. As long as Wild only moved around, no one would sense his existence. When he had first obtained that belt, Wild was so excited that he started playing hide and seek. As a result, no one could find him. Only when he was too hungry and began to munch on things was he exposed. During this tribulation, Long Chen had had Wild hide in the void. As long as Long Chen didn't give the order, Wild wasn't to come out. Wild always listened to Long Chen, so even though the powerful shockwaves of the battle had sent him rolling back and forth, he had remained silent. Only when that elder came and froze the world did Long Chen give the order. Wild had stealthily gotten close as the elder's frozen space was unable to affect him. As a result, he managed to smash the elder in the head. However, because it was a sneak attack, it wasn't his full-strength attack. Seeing the elder was fine, Wild was indignant and wanted to try it again. "Wild, wait." Long Chen stopped Wild. That was a fourth-step nether passage expert, and this battle was too dangerous for Wild. Long Chen suddenly raised his head and shouted, "Elder Long, how long are you planning on just watching the fun? Long Chen suddenly shouted into the void. Everyone looked into the sky, only to see the void slowly twist. A group of 7 elders walked out, with one of them being Elder Long. Elder Long smiled. Long Chen, congratulations on advancing to Nether Passage. With this, a brilliant path of endless possibilities has been opened to you. A brilliant path? I doubt it. I am just a regular cultivator, while it's the divine families that stand above everyone and control this world's fate. You decide what black and white is. How could I possibly enter your eyes? Said Long Chen mockingly. Long Chen was extremely dissatisfied with Elder Long right now. His previous good opinion of him had been wiped out. It was Elder Long who had taken over his matters, and when he had left, he had entrusted things to Shen Qingfeng and the 8th Heavenly Dragon Legion. That was all understandable. However, once Long Chen was gone, Shen Qingfeng was replaced by Ye Bencheng. Long Chen refused to believe that Elder Long had been unaware of that. Long Chen, there might be some misunderstandings here. Just now, Elder Ye Yaochen was just trying to stop you in order to make things clear before any rash decisions are made. You're too tense, said Elder Long Ye Yaochen. Long Chen suddenly recalled that when the Dragon Blood Legion had been stopping the blood race from entering the Martial Heaven continent, there had been a group of idiots from the outer branches of the divine families who had tried to make things difficult for him. They had thought that with the heavenly divine writ, he wouldn't dare to touch them. But Long Chen had immediately started killing. He remembered catching one of them called Zhao Feng and demanding to know why they were targeting him. It was at that time that Shen Qingfeng had appeared, and Long Chen had given Zhao Feng to him to handle. At that time, Zhao Feng had been scared witless and had said that the mastermind was Ye Yaochen. However, that also seemed wrong. Hadn't he heard that Ye Yaochen was only 37 years old? Why did he look more like 73? But Elder Long was clearly intentionally telling Long Chen his identity, so it couldn't be wrong. Elder Ye Yaochen is the youngest member amongst us Heaven Elders. He's only 37 years old. However, within the Samsara realm, it is possible to change the form of your life. For him to be in an old state is no surprise, said Elder Long, seeing Long Chen's suspicions. It seemed that these 8 were all Heaven Elders of the divine families, but only Ye Yaochen had taken action ahead of the others, while they continued to watch. In a place that Long Chen didn't know of, a pair of eyes was silently watching everything happening here. Long Chen, release Ye Bencheng and I will investigate this matter, demanded Ye Yaochen, glaring at him like a viper. However, despite his hostility, he didn't directly charge over. Long Chen looked at Ye Yaochen and then to Elder Long and the others. Seeming to understand something, he sneered, "What are you investigating for? Are you a bailiff? Are you a judge? Things are already so simple. Ye Bencheng wanted to kill me. What else is there to investigate? Are you blind or dumb?" One was called Ye Bencheng, and one was called Ye Yaochen. Clearly, they were from the same side, maybe even one family. Releasing him would be freeing a tiger. Ye Bencheng tried to speak, but his throat was clenched tightly by Long Chen, so it came out garbled. As for his soul, it was completely suppressed by Long Chen's Yuan spirit. With just a thought, Long Chen could kill him. Long Chen, Elder Ye Yaochen is correct. Things are still unclear. I'd advise you to consider Elder Ye's suggestion, said Elder Long lightly. Hearing that, Long Chen instantly understood that Elder Long was indicating to him that he didn't need to be afraid of Ye Yaochen's threat. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said that Long Chen just had to consider Ye Yaochen's suggestion. Of the 8 elders, 7 of them were just standing there indifferently. Clearly, Ye Yaochen did not have absolute authority here. Long Chen could accept or not accept. Had he misjudged Elder Long? Or was this to say that the relations of divine families were much more complicated on the inside than he had thought? Elder Long, what are you saying? Long Chen is just a mortal disciple. How is there room for him to consider obeying the orders of the divine families? Demanded Ye Yaochen, also having heard Elder Long's subtle indication. Elder Yi, that's wrong. The divine families exist for the world's living beings. In this situation where a sovereign has not become apparent, we must work together with the outstanding heroes of the Martial Heaven continent against foreign invaders. We are all working together, And although the power of our divine families is a bit stronger, all the martial heaven continent's people have the right to express their opinions, even if they differ. For you to be so tyrannical, it seems that you're going against the Lord Venerate's orders. He won't be happy. Elder Long shook his head. Elder Ye Yaochen shrank back at the mention of the Lord Venerate, his expression growing ugly. He shouted, "Long Chen, this matter involves the divine families, and before things are clear, I demand that you release Yi Benchang into our custody. Once we find out the truth, you will naturally have your justice." The truth? Justice? Are you going to find a bunch of scapegoats and push all the responsibility onto them, then kill them so that they can't testify? Do you want to play such a game with me? Elder Long told me that you were 37 years old. Based on your appearance, I didn't expect you to say such a brainless thing, but now I believe it, sneered Long Chen. Tian, tell me, how did I end up offending a heaven elder of the divine families? Why are you targeting me? What nonsense are you spouting now? Shouted Ye Yaochen. You're going to keep acting? This kind of play is something I stopped doing in my youth. Long Chen shook his head contemptuously. He found that the higher the cultivation base, the lower the intelligence, and the tricks played also grew cruder. Such tricks were child's play in the Phoenix Cry Empire. But it seemed that these supreme experts liked to play them. Perhaps due to being stronger, they no longer needed to use their brains. That was why their excuses became laughably implausible. Long Chen, I am ordering you to hand over Yi Benchang dash. Perhaps Ye Yaochen's age was still too immature to have patience, resulting in him shouting. Yi Benchang suddenly exploded in Long Chen's hand, transforming into bloody mist. For a moment, every expert of the martial heaven continent was simply stunned. The giant battlefield was so silent that it would be possible to hear a pin dropping. Long Chen had actually killed Yi Benchang in front of 8 of the divine family's heaven elders. Those were 4th step nether passage experts, and Long Chen had killed a commander of the Heavenly Dragon Legion just like that. Was that a declaration of war against the divine families? Long Chen? Ye Yaochen's eyes were scarlet with rage. Long Chen had actually killed Yi Benchang, his blood nephew. It's not my fault. You shouted so loudly that you scared him, making him self-detonate. It has nothing to do with me. Long Chen waved his hand. As he slowly stepped away, he was like an innocent person leaving, as if afraid of being falsely accused. Long Chen. Ye Yaochen spat out Long Chen's name from the cracks between his teeth. His bone-chilling killing intent erupted out of him. Long Chen felt his body move against his will. He hastily tried to flee. You think you can leave? Leave your life behind first, roared Ye Yaochen. However, he had barely moved when Elder Long blocked his path, indifferently saying, Elder Yi, what do you think you're doing? This was definitely a stall. Was he giving Long Chen a chance to get away? Ye Yaochen roared, I'm telling you to get out of my way. Otherwise, don't blame me for turning hostile. Ye Yaochen's roar made Elder Long smile. That's fine. Are you going to be hostile to the one up above as well though? Elder Long pointed up to the sky. Ye Yaochen looked up and his expression suddenly changed. At this moment a voice rang out from the sky. Right and wrong will be decided later. Do not make a rash move now. The voice wasn't loud, but it contained unquestionable dignity. However, the voice was heard only by the 8 elders. Others were unable to hear anything. Ye Yaochen had been like a mad dog just now, so these words were effectively a slap in his face. He no longer possessed the courage to even fart. Suddenly, rumbling rang out that made everyone look at Long Chen. They jumped when they saw that his retreat was just a cover for him to charge toward the distant Defeng. Evil Moon shone with its evil light as Long Chen used this opportunity not to flee, but to approach Defeng in an attempt to kill him. Defeng's expression changed. He had used up everything in the fight and was now exhausted. He had no energy to recover, and Long Chen was now rushing over like a life-reaping devil king. Although he had the army of the ancient family alliance standing behind him, they didn't give him any sense of safety. His manifestations suddenly shuddered, with the Blood Emperor spreading his arms and enveloping him. Runes formed into a giant shield. Boom! Long Chen's saber smashed into the runic shield, blowing it apart. He unleashed a second attack to split open the two hands. Runes dissipated through the air, and the heavenly Tao manifestation faded with them. However, Di Feng's figure had vanished. He had craftily set up these defenses as bait while he used a secret art to flee. It could be seen just how terrified he was of Long Chen. Di Feng had vanished. However, in the distance, there was another figure covered in black runes. Spatial energy exploded out of there as Tian Xiezi also used a secret art to flee. Boom! A blood-colored arrow flew over, with a golden runic talisman hanging on it. It exploded beside Tian Xiezi. He want to run? Keep dreaming. Xia Chen and Guoran laughed wickedly. They had interrupted Tian Xiezi's secret art. Just at that moment, Long Chen rushed over like a bolt of lightning. We were still a bit lacking. We let Di Feng get away, grumbled Xia Chen. When Long Chen had pretended to be retreating, they hadn't understood what he was doing. It was only once he actually attacked that they realized, otherwise they might have been able to stop Di Feng. In that instant, Xia Chen had understood Long Chen's intentions, and seeing Tian Xiezi prepare to run, he took out a rune talisman for Guoran. Guoran had immediately used an arrow to shoot the rune talisman over. It disrupted spatial formations, interrupting Tian Xiezi's transportation. Furthermore, for a short while, the spatial laws remained broken, preventing any further attempts. Tian Xiezi's expression changed, and he immediately summoned the corrupt god Ancient Tower, jumping inside of it. Boom! The corrupt god Ancient Tower was sent flying by a slash from Long Chen. If Tian Xiezi had been the slightest bit slower, he would have been killed. A giant scar was left on the corrupt god Ancient Tower, shocking the experts present. Just what kind of origin did Long Chen's black saber have to be able to do such a thing? Not only had it broken Pengzi's lightning halberd, but it had also injured this divine item left by a god. As Tian Xiezi fled with the corrupt god Ancient Tower, the corrupt experts charged over at Long Chen. Long Chen hacked Evil Moon repeatedly, slaughtering the experts trying to stop him. Not even a third-step nether passage expert was qualified to block his path. With lightning wings and the celestial lightning body blink, he shot after Tian Xiezi. The two of them quickly vanished from sight. When the two of them were gone, the experts of the various powers were left in a daze. They looked around. The Kunpeng race's ancestral land was long gone, and they still were not quite able to believe what had just happened. Elder Long Chen ignored the heavenly divine writ, disrupting the peace of the continent and starting a war. He creates countless calamities. Are the divine families going to be so indifferent toward him? Shouted Peng Wanli furiously, his voice hoarse. Pengzi's death and the destruction of the Peng Emperor's statue meant that the Kunpeng race was doomed. Long Chen was their bane. The originally glorious Kunpeng race would fully decline. The Peng race's experts wept. Just how glorious had the Kunpeng race been? Everything they were seeing in front of them was unacceptable, and this had all been caused by Long Chen. They demanded justice from the divine families. Peng Wanli seemed to have aged countless years. Elder Long looked at him and said, "We will be able to determine right and wrong after investigating. We will naturally get justice for the martial heaven continent. If Long Chen really did deliberately start a war to harm the continent, the divine families will bring our full power to remove the scourge. However, if there are reasons, then we'll need to investigate them first. The divine families won't let off a bad person, but we won't wrongly blame a good person." Bullshit. This matter was clearly caused by your Yi Benchang dash, shouted Peng Wanli. But before he could finish, a ray of divine light pierced through his body. He instantly stiffened, terrified to find that he couldn't move. Maintain the appropriate respect when you face the divine families. We are always just and impartial. To push all the responsibility onto a dead person, what kind of wicked intentions are the Peng race harboring? Ordered Ye Yaochen. With just a pointing of his finger, he had managed to pierce Peng Wanli's body. That single finger contained a powerful warning. If he wanted to kill Peng Wanli, then all he would have to do was point at his head. Peng Wanli was infuriated. He didn't have Long Chen's guts to resist in front of a fourth-step nether passage expert who was also a heaven elder of the divine families. Long Chen willfully slaughtered innocent people. Everyone saw it. However, this matter involves many things, and even the divine families must be careful with how we handle it. You just need to listen to the conclusion, said Ye Yaochen icily. As a result, Peng Wanli clenched his teeth furiously but didn't say anything. Elder Longchen is hunting down the top genius of my corrupt path. Doesn't that mean that the heavenly divine writ has lost any effect? In the future, we can ignore it too and fight the righteous path again, right? Demanded Xie Wentian coldly. In the front of Xie Wentian's icy questioning, Elder Long indifferently shook his head. Now you're thinking of the heavenly divine writ? Tell me, when Longchen was undergoing his tribulation and you attacked him, did you think of it then? Well, Xie Wentian was stunned for a moment, but he quickly said smoothly, it was the commander of the divine families who said that Longchen was attempting to overthrow the martial heaven continent and wanted us to attack together. Xie Wentian instantly threw all the blame to Yi Benchong. It was true that Yi Benchong had called for everyone to kill Longchen. Everyone could bear witness to it. Hence, the divine families could not escape responsibility for it. Yi Benchong had a personal enmity with Longchen. I'm sure that essentially everyone here is aware of it. The 8 of us came specifically to investigate this. However, Yi Benchong was only in charge of defending the path to the Yin-Yang world and helping you. How did he have the authority to order you? As for why you listened to his appeal, there were probably many reasons, but we're still not sure about those matters. The position of the divine families has always been explicitly clear, so don't try to blame us. We are only overseeing the battlefield and would never order any person or power to do anything. You laugh when you benefit, but cry when you don't. That seems to be lacking the manner of a leader of such a major force, said Elder Long lightly. His words were said without any fury, as if he would never get angry, but he easily voiced their guilt without actually saying the words. Yi Benchong was in charge of the entrance to the Yin-Yang world, and during that time, the various powers had constantly squeezed the righteous path, taking up more portions of the battlefield. The Xian beasts in particular had provoked them several times. They had even killed the Shen Dao sect's genius and started a war. That had been the result that Yi Benchong had wanted, and his actions had encouraged even more arrogance from the various powers. The Xian beasts were the most tyrannical. They had even sent their experts to wipe out the cloud-chasing heaven-swallowing sparrow race. Longchen had caught them, and his fury was what had resulted in this. The source of the problem was still them, so they could only blame themselves. When asked who the source of the problem was though, they blamed it on Yi Benchong, making the divine families bear responsibility, even acting right and confident. However, Elder Long's words made the corrupt path, the ancient races, the ancient family alliance, the Xian beasts, and the others speechless, unable to retort. When you bullied the disciples of the righteous path, did you think of the heavenly divine writ? When you killed our brothers and sisters, did you think of this day? Yi Lingshan coldly raised her sword, which still had some blood on it. That's right. Senior apprentice brother Wang Zhen was killed by you, but where was your sense of justice then? Have you forgotten your disdain and indifference from then? Cursed Hua Xiu. She was still choked with emotion at the thought of Wang Zhen. He had only died to save everyone else. A generation's genius didn't die to the blood race, but instead to some brutes who only know how to fight amongst their allies. Just how wrong was his death? You still have the face to accuse others? The Shen Dao sect's disciples immediately began to curse them. Who do you think Wang Zhen was to count as a generation's genius? Sneered a disciple of the Xian beasts. That one sneer caused the Shen Dao sect's disciples to erupt. Compared to senior apprentice brother Longchen, who do you think you are? Senior apprentice brother Longchen crushed Pengzi like swatting a fly, so what do you have to say about that? If we were to compare you, you would be dog shit in front of senior apprentice brother Longchen. When he's here, you all become cowering tortoises. If you dared to make so much noise in front of senior apprentice brother Longchen, he'd slap you all to death with one blow. You animals, you were all so arrogant when bullying others. Just keep acting arrogant. Why do you all look like your dads just died? The Martial Heaven Alliance's disciples joined the cursing of the Shen Dao sect's disciples. The time when Long Chen had been absent was truly stifling. Now that he was back and had even successfully advanced, sweeping through the other geniuses, they were excited enough to dance. He had killed Pengzi as well as Yi Benchong, and Di Feng had fled in terror. Now, Long Chen was chasing after Tian Xiezi. The righteous path's disciples' morale soared. Could they possibly let go of this chance to mock their abusers? The Xian beasts clenched their teeth furiously. They didn't say anything else though because the Dragon Blood warriors were looking at them like tigers looking at sheep. Although the Dragon Blood warriors had stopped fighting, their killing intent had not diminished. In the battle just now, they had killed over 3,000 members of the Heavenly Dragon Legion without losing a single one of their members. The Dragon Blood Legion was too terrifying. The Xian beasts felt a cold breeze blow past their necks with the Dragon Blood warriors looking at them. What now? Boss isn't here, so do we need to find an excuse to wipe out these Xian beasts? Wondered Guoran out loud. What kind of excuse? Asked Gu Yong, his grip on his weapon tightening. For example, the weather's not bad, offered Guoran. Don't mess around. Gu Yong rolled his eyes. The 8 heaven elders of the divine families are still here to clean up the mess. We can't make a move now. Let's just wait for news from Long Chen. Meng Qi shook her head. She looked in the direction where Long Chen had gone. She knew that even if he had to chase Tian Xiezi to the ends of the world, he would still kill him. The void exploded, and a giant bone tower came charging out like a shooting star. Chi waves blasted out of it as it rushed away at maximum speed. Boom! Another explosion followed. A saber image slashed into the corrupt god ancient tower, sending it flying with even greater speed. A new scar appeared on the corrupt god ancient tower, which was already covered in scars. Within the bone tower, Tian Xiezi's aura was turbulent. Blood was pouring out of his orifices, yet he persevered. Long Chen was like a death god unleashed from hell to drag him down. Every time he attacked the corrupt god ancient tower, a piece of Tian Xiezi's soul crumbled. If this continued, then even before the corrupt god ancient tower fell apart, he would be dead. Long Chen continued chasing and attacking. He asked Evil Moon, "What's going on? Why isn't this damn tower breaking?" Evil Moon answered, "How could it be so simple? That's a legacy divine item with countless years of faith energy from the entire corrupt path condensed inside of it. It must have absorbed countless souls to strengthen itself. Although it might look broken and on the verge of blowing apart, the actual damage isn't that great. Without harming its core, the damage done to it isn't even as great as what we did to it last time. Once we exhaust all the faith energy, it will lose its support and be blown apart. As for that little fellow, he's badly wounded and has no chance to heal. As long as you keep attacking like this, he won't last long." "But I don't have that much energy left either." Long Chen sighed. After advancing to the Nether Passage realm, he had been fighting against powerful opponents the entire time. He had fought against the 4 of them, and at that moment, over half his energy was used up by Evil Moon to activate its divine ability. Right now, Long Chen was only acting tough. He merely had a bit more than 10% of his spiritual yuan left. "It's fine. He's in a worse condition than you, so you'll definitely last longer. Just work hard," snickered Evil Moon. "Then can't you put in some work?" grumbled Long Chen. "How? Yun Shang's seal makes it so that my power must come from you. You'll need to rely on your strength," said Evil Moon. "Didn't you say that you already broke the sovereign seal before?" demanded Long Chen. "I'm still a long way from that. I only broke 1 level of it. Yun Shang's seal isn't something you can imagine. At that time, I really was too arrogant to run into him. To tell the truth, I still regret it. Well, whatever, just keep attacking. He'll definitely fall apart before you," said Evil Moon. Even it felt great respect for Sovereign Yun Shang despite constantly cursing him. Seeing Evil Moon wasn't in a good mood, Long Chen didn't pursue the topic. He continued attacking. Originally, Long Chen should have brought Cloud with him to chase. But the corrupt god ancient tower was too powerful, and he didn't want her to be injured. Even if Long Chen had the power to unleash one of his bigger moves, he wouldn't have time to unleash it. Tian Xiezi would have long since fled, So all Long Chen could do was continue attacking like this. Every time Evil Moon attacked, the bone tower quivered and the void rumbled. They passed by countless cities and sections. People looked up in shock when they passed. They barely managed to catch a glimpse of Long Chen with his saber chasing a giant tower and attacking it. Some people recognized it to be the Corrupt Path's core divine item, the Corrupt God Ancient Tower, shocking them even more. However, both of them were so fast that they were gone in just a twinkling. Only some people with stronger cultivation bases saw them. Long Chen's arms were growing weary. He didn't even know how many times he had attacked, but he didn't stop. He had no idea when he would be able to break the tower. Even with his willpower, he was thinking of giving up. However, seeing Tian Xiezi's blood pouring out of him inside of the tower every time he attacked made him continue. They had gone to the other edge of the central plains. At this moment, a giant gate appeared in the air. The gate opened and black qi gushed out. The green mountains instantly turned into a land of death. Giant trees withered, while even stones aged and cracked. The air of death enveloped the tower. This wasn't the law of death, but a kind of death aura, an aura of decay and darkness. It was like the air of a tomb. Tian Xiezi laughed once he flew inside the gate. Long Chen, you want to kill me? Come and fight in here. This should be the legendary Corrupt God Cemetery. A grave look appeared on Long Chen's face. This place was said to contain the body of the Corrupt God. It was the Corrupt Path's strongest support. Who do you think is afraid of you? Sneered Long Chen. He charged in, his figure vanishing into the gate. Just a moment after he entered, a group of people arrived. It was the 8 Heaven Elders, followed by another mass of people. Back in the Kunpeng race's destroyed ancestral lands, the various powers no longer dared to fight. But they didn't want to just foolishly stand there, so they had chased the 2 of them here by following their auras. Tian Xiezi actually opened the gate to the Corrupt God Cemetery. Elder Long frowned. The Corrupt God Cemetery had several entrances, but most of them were fake. There was only one true gate. It was said that ever since the Corrupt God Cemetery had appeared, the main gate had never been opened. It was said that once it was open, a calamity would befall all life. That was the prophecy left by the Corrupt God. Or perhaps it should be called a curse. Elder Long watched the giant gate emitting endless death qi. The vitality of this region was gradually being corroded. In the future, this region would be a land of death. It seems that Long Chen actually chased Tian Xiezi inside. Has that little fellow never heard of the Corrupt God Cemetery? One of the other Heaven Elders also frowned. He has definitely heard of it. But he has one hobby which can be summed up as playing with his life. Elder Long shook his head. Someone who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. He doesn't have the slightest shred of respect for anything. He'll sooner or later lose his life like this. How can such a person be of any use to the divine families? He just advanced to Nether Passage and he's going to die in the Corrupt God Cemetery. Elder Long, you can give up on your fanciful thoughts, sneered Ye Yaochen. Clearly, Ye Yaochen was against Long Chen, while Elder Long had always been supporting him. The conflict between the 2 of them was growing increasingly obvious. Elder Long lightly smiled. Every person has a different cultivation path. Although Long Chen likes to wear black and has his own peculiarities, I'm sure that even you have no choice but to admit he has a charisma that no one else possesses. All the people beside him are willing to sacrifice their lives for him. Even the 12,000 members of the Dragonblood Legion are of one heart. At any time, they have absolute trust in each other. Can you tell me if there is anyone else on the Martial Heaven continent capable of doing such a thing, including the divine families? Are the 8 heavenly dragon legions capable of such a thing? If they were, then in a battle of 10,000 against 10,000, with them being in the 3rd step Nether Passage realm with absolute advantage, how could the 7th heavenly dragon legion be suppressed by the Dragonblood Legion? Elder Yi, you shouldn't keep being biased because of some small things, or it will appear intolerant and damage the dignity of the divine families. Long Junwu, what do you think you are saying? Ye Yaochen's expression changed. These words were far too insulting. Elder Long practically declared him to have embarrassed the divine families. The 2 of you should stop fighting. Lord Venerate will most likely handle this matter, so right or wrong will be decided by him. Fighting until you're red in the face here will make others laugh at you, said one of the other heaven elders. At this time, the other experts of the martial heaven continent were arriving. The Dragonblood Legion was the first to arrive thanks to Cloud. The others were also arriving one by one. As a result, Ye Yaochen could only shut his mouth, but his expression was growing increasingly ugly. Ah, Long Chen actually charged into the corrupt god cemetery? He's definitely dead. The corrupt paths experts arrived. When Xiezi saw the open gate, he raised his head and laughed. The other corrupt experts also laughed. No one knew better than them just how terrifying the corrupt god cemetery was. Having entered, there was no way Long Chen would be leaving. Idiots, who do you think my boss is? How can a little cemetery trap my boss? The corrupt god? He isn't even fit to carry boss's shoes, sneered Guoran. Blasphemer of the corrupt god, you are courting death, raged the corrupt experts. To carry my boss's shoes is praising your corrupt god. What, don't like it? Come at me then. Don't think that when my boss isn't present, the Dragonblood Legion is afraid of you. Come, let's see who in the Dragonblood Legion is afraid of you idiots. Guoran walked out and pointed at Xiezi arrogantly. The sound of 10,000 swords coming out of their sheaths rang out. The Dragonblood warriors held their weapons, practically daring the corrupt path to come over. With the divine families present, they weren't in a good position to launch the first blow, but if the corrupt path attacked first, then that would be exactly what they wanted. Stop. Those who blaspheme the corrupt god will be punished by the corrupt god. All that awaits them is death and terror. Killing them now is letting them off easy. Xiezi raised a hand, preventing the corrupt experts from attacking. Perhaps Xiezi words were believed by the corrupt path's people, but the others knew that he was afraid. Even if Long Chen wasn't present, he didn't dare to start a fight. The righteous path's experts clenched their fists. They had been fighting the corrupt path for countless years but had never terrified them to the point that they didn't dare to make a sound like this. Big Brother Gua, I'm hungry. Can I kill a few Xian beasts for food? Asked Wild. The Xian beasts' expressions changed. The Xian beasts' expressions changed upon hearing Wild's words. Powerful existences like them had actually been viewed as food. That was the greatest insult to them. Now isn't a good time. Why don't you take a nap? Suggested Guoran, glancing at Elder Long and the others. The 8 heaven elders of the divine families were present. Although Elder Long had said that he wouldn't force anyone to do anything, ignoring them like that wasn't good for the future. After weighing the pros and cons, Guoran didn't give the order to attack the Xian beasts. It was better to wait for their boss to return. All right. Wild obediently obeyed. He was about to go to sleep when Meng Qi suddenly handed him some roast chicken. Here, your big brother Long wanted me to prepare this for you. Upon seeing that roast chicken, Wild's eyes lit up. He immediately took it. Thank you, big sister Meng Qi. Everyone was shocked upon seeing that roast chicken, even the heaven elders. That was no roast chicken. It was clearly a peak 12th rank magical beast, the Raging Flame Bird. It was covered in divine flame runes which allowed people to recognize its identity. While it looked like it had been roasted, that was actually its natural color. Wild munched down on its leg. Flames burst out of his mouth as he chewed. People shivered. The Raging Flame Bird lived in lava, and its natural flames were on par with the power of the top 10 earth flames. However, Wild was eating it like it was barbecue. It only tasted a bit hot to him. He continued eating after blowing on it a few times. In just a short while, a peak 12th rank magical beast was eaten. He definitely possesses the barbarian race's bloodline, and a high-ranking bloodline at that. Otherwise, there's no way he could endure the blood chi of that magical beast, said one of the heaven elders upon seeing this. The barbarian race has been extinct for countless years. There can't be one in existence. This person had to have encountered some kind of miracle to awaken the barbarian race's bloodline. One of the other heaven elders shook his head, thinking that Wild couldn't possibly be part of the barbarian race. If Wild really was part of the barbarian race, then he couldn't possibly be alone. He had to have a mother, a father, or a family. If such a terrifying race existed on the Martial Heaven continent, then it would be impossible for it to be kept secret. If you want to know his origins, isn't it simple? Just ask the Heaven Executioner and everything will become clear. Ye Yaochen's lips curled sinisterly. The other elders' expressions clearly changed upon having the Heaven Executioner mentioned. It seemed that this name was taboo. Elder Long darkly said, "Ye Yaochen, I'd advise you to curb your craziness. Don't go too far, or you might lose your own life." Elder Long had always managed to act very indifferently, but a flash of fury appeared when the Heaven Executioner was brought up. What? Did I say something wrong? The Heaven Executioner is knowledgeable about all kinds of foreign races. This big fellow will definitely be research material for the Heaven Executioner in the future. Ye Yaochen laughed brightly as if he had won a round and taken the advantage. The other elders didn't say anything. They all just looked at the gate. Only Elder Long remained dark-faced. He looked coldly at Ye Yaochen, and Ye Yaochen returned his gaze. The atmosphere was frosty. When Long Chen entered the gate, the world turned dark. Although it wasn't pitch black, it was dusky. The air was filled with the aura of death and decay. Boom! Long Chen's saber slashed into the corrupt god ancient tower once more, sending it flying. Inside, Tian Xiezi became covered in cracks. He had reached his limit. One more attack and he would be dead. Haha. However, despite that, Tian Xiezi laughed like a madman. Long Chen, you can't kill me. I am the heir of the corrupt god. Not only am I blessed by heaven and earth, but I also have the protection of the god. That includes all the karmic luck of the corrupt path. You could kill Pengzi, but you can't kill me. I don't believe it. Let me try another attack, and if you don't die, I'll believe it. Get over here. Long Chen charged over, preparing another attack. The bone tower flew away. Every time, after unleashing an attack, it would take a few breaths' time before he could catch back up. Didn't you say I couldn't kill you? Why not stop and let me try again? If I can't kill you, I'll turn and leave, called out Long Chen. Let's talk about it when you catch up, sneered Tian Xiezi. Long Chen, something's wrong. We've been surrounded, warned Evil Moon. No worry. Today, we must kill him one way or another. Long Chen pressed on, ignoring everything else. Very quickly, he was close enough to raise Evil Moon once again. His saber fell toward the bone tower. However, the void suddenly exploded and the surrounding space completely changed. At some point, he had appeared within a giant cemetery. Countless gravestones could be seen, and they went further than he could see. Those gravestones now shot out chains toward the corrupt god ancient tower. Divine runes flowed through them, and the bone tower seemed to have received the nourishment of some kind of energy. Boom! Long Chen's attack landed and his arms shook. He was blown back by the backlash, which almost caused him to cough up blood. Inside, Xiezi was coughing up more blood. Just how much blood did he still have in his body to not have coughed it all up after all this time? Long Chen, how is that? Now you believe me, right? You can't kill me. Tian Xiezi wiped off the blood and laughed. He actually flew out of the tower to stand on top of it, looking down on Long Chen. By standing there, all the energy of the surroundings surged toward him. It was like he was the master of the world, and his injuries slowly began to heal. Long Chen, the most foolish thing you've ever done in your life is to chase me into the corrupt god cemetery. There is no way you will ever leave. Perhaps this was the guidance of the mighty corrupt god, letting me obtain another powerful puppet. Tian Xiezi clapped his hands together, and countless gravestones split open. They were like a giant formation shooting out rays of light that completely sealed this area. How laughable! Since I dared to come, it means I'm not afraid of your little tricks. Long Chen sneered. A dragon cry rang out and a giant lightning dragon appeared. Lightning blasted apart the barrier that had just formed. Even if you have thunder force, how will you fight against the energy of the entire world? Tian Xiezi was not at all surprised by Lei Long's appearance and the destruction of the barrier. It was no longer any secret that Long Chen was raising a lightning dragon capable of devouring tribulation lightning, turning that lightning into its own. Heavenly tribulation lightning was of the pure yang aspect, the bane of all fiendish and demonic energies. He was well aware of that, yet he was still confident. The entire world shook as more gravestones split open. Pillars of light shot over. Lei Long's giant form still appeared small in the face of the power of the entire world, and it was trapped within the intertwining lights. The corrupt god cemetery was so large that it was impossible to see its end. Chains of death shot out, and parts of Lei Long began to crumble. Longchen, you must not be aware of this, but the corrupt god cemetery does not just contain the bones of the corrupt god. It also has the true body of the one that you call the corrupt emperor. At the same time, it has millions and millions of heavenly geniuses born throughout countless years. Every gravestone has an outstanding figure buried beneath it. In their lives, they killed countless experts of the righteous path, giving them the qualifications to be buried here. Every one of them buried their life's power here. Do you know why the divine families can wave off the other powers, but must maintain the proper respect toward the corrupt path? It's because the power contained within the corrupt god cemetery is enough to destroy the entire martial heaven continent. Even if the 8 heaven elders from the divine families came in, they wouldn't be able to leave, sneered Tian Xiezi. More pillars of light soared, as if agreeing with Tian Xiezi. The entire corrupt god cemetery was covered in light. Chains of death were also present. Within the light was their darkness, and the aura of death was thick. Lei Long's body flickered as it fought. It was like a lamp in a world of darkness. Hence, it retreated behind Long Chen and glared at Tian Xiezi. Are you bragging? After being chased down to your ancestors' tombs, your ancestors are cursing you inside their coffins. They probably want to charge out and beat you for this disrespect, responded Long Chen. All you have is a sharp mouth. I'll just treat those as your final words. Just quietly enjoy the taste of death. Tian Xiezi suddenly slammed the corrupt god ancient tower with a palm. Just now, as they were talking, the corrupt god ancient tower's wounds had all healed. Its aura was even more terrifying than before. Longchen, don't worry. I won't use the laws here to kill you. I will openly defeat you. Don't you claim to be undefeatable within the same realm? Today, I will break that miracle, letting the world know that in front of the one known as Tian Xiezi, you, Longchen, are just an ant. Tian Xiezi's manifestation burst into existence, and the giant corrupt god unleashed boundless pressure. It actually grabbed the bone tower to use as a weapon. Its aura was completely different from before. On the martial heaven continent, my manifestation is suppressed by the laws and unable to bring out its full form. I can't use its true power. Now, I'll show you my true body. Tian Xiezi waved a hand. A blood-colored spear appeared and suddenly stabbed into the void. Layers of chains surrounded Long Chen and Tian Xiezi, following Tian Xiezi's movements. At the same time, the martial heaven continent's expert standing outside the gate to the corrupt god cemetery suddenly got to watch a revealed scene. Rumbling sounds accompanied the images. Is that Long Chen and Tian Xiezi? Where is that? How is it so bizarre? Is it really the interior of the corrupt god cemetery? Shocked cries rang out. The gate was showing Long Chen and Tian Xiezi facing each other amidst endless darkness. Long Chen has been drawn into the depths of the corrupt god cemetery. Even if he had 9 lives, he wouldn't be able to leave alive. Laughed Xiezi. What a joke. Even the netherworld was barged into by my boss along with the rest of us. As for a little corrupt god cemetery, you must be dreaming if you think it can trap my boss. Sneered Guoran. Just wait for the moment we can enjoy the sight of Long Chen dying, snorted Xiaowenin. Within the corrupt god cemetery, with a lightning dragon curling around him, Long Chen looked up to see a screen of light in the air. From that screen, he could vaguely see what was happening outside. He looked back to Tian Xiezi, knowing that Tian Xiezi wanted everyone to watch as he killed him. To tell the truth, sometimes I really admire you, sighed Long Chen. Oh, what do you admire? Asked Tian Xiezi curiously. He seemed to believe that victory was already within his grasp. I've never been able to figure out how you people have so much blind confidence. Just where does it come from? You have nothing to base your belief on. Do you know my trump cards? Do you know why I dared to enter the corrupt god cemetery? To be honest, your confidence is a bit worrying. It's like your trump cards are stronger than mine. I'm very curious about the truth, said Long Chen. What a waste of words. You want to see the truth? While chasing me, you must have recovered to about 30%, right? Then I won't take advantage of you. I'll let you attack first, and I'll use power to show you what despair is. Tian Xiezi's aura had fully recovered. With the support of the laws here, his power was growing even greater than before. Really? Then I won't stand on courtesy. Long Chen suddenly reached out a hand. He slowly raised it, and in front of Tian Xiezi's cold gaze, he lightly snapped it. The snap of his fingers left people guessing just what kind of peerless technique he would be using. His aura didn't change at all. But at that moment, the lightning dragon behind him opened its mouth. A lightning sword shot out toward Tian Xiezi. The countless chains filling the air shuddered just from the existence of that lightning sword. Cracks appeared along them. Although thunder force was the bane of the laws here, it was more like water against fire. One drop of water couldn't possibly resist in the face of a blazing inferno. Tian Xiezi controlled the laws of the entire corrupt god cemetery, while what Long Chen had was just a lightning house pet. Besides, what kind of power could possibly destroy the laws of the corrupt god cemetery? The lightning sword definitely didn't have the requisite power to do such a thing. Hence, Tian Xiezi didn't even have to care about it. Runes condensed from every direction of the world and pulled into his blood-colored spear. The surrounding death chi was sucked up by it. Boom! Lightning exploded and Tian Xiezi hacked up blood, his spear flying out of his hold and vanishing. On the other hand, the lightning sword continued onward, smashing through the thousands of chains and creating a giant hole. What? The people outside were dumbfounded by this result. Tian Xiezi was like the ruler of a world. With just a wave of his hand, he could control the corrupt god cemetery's laws. Everyone knew that he had currently reached an unimaginably horrific level. However, Long Chen didn't even attack him personally and had only sent out a single house pet. This kind of attack should be considered a probing blow that Tian Xiezi could wipe out easily, but the result was inexplicable. Xie Wenyan in particular was stunned, unable to accept this result. Meanwhile, Tian Xiezi stared in shock at his right hand, which was completely crushed from that exchange. Haha, do you see? This is my boss's #1 trump card. With just a snap of his fingers, he can make Tian Xiezi piss himself. Guoran arrogantly laughed. The sight of the shocked corrupt experts was incredibly refreshing. This one attack didn't just shock the corrupt path but also everyone here. Even the 8 heaven elders were startled. That sword, it seems to possess the aura of a sovereign, said one of the heaven elders, bewildered. It truly did have the slightest aura of a sovereign. Although it was just a tiny bit, it was enough to break apart the laws inside the corrupt god cemetery. That lightning house pet of Long Chen's is incredible, said another heaven elder. That lightning house pet is a defiance of the heavens. The sovereign left a mark on the heavenly tribulation, and that was enough for it to take in the slightest aura of the sovereign. That little bit of aura is capable of making its attacks supersede the various laws, so power on the same level is unable to compete with it. To suppress it would require at least double the power. The oldest of the 8 heaven elders spoke for the first time. His voice contained some praise as well as envy. If Long Chen raised his lightning pet properly, it would become a supreme killing weapon. As for Ye Yaochen, he had a hint of jealousy as well as darkness in his eyes. An unreadable smile appeared on his face. Within the corrupt god cemetery, Tian Xiezi was completely dumbfounded. He had never imagined that Long Chen's lightning pet would be capable of such a terrifying attack. When that attack had been unleashed, he had felt the power supporting him in this world being stripped away, resulting in him losing most of his power. Damn, Long Chen, you really are crazy. You managed to absorb the mark of the sovereign? Evil Moon cried out in shock. But of course, a treasure that has reached my hands cannot escape, chortled Long Chen. When he had absorbed the final lightning rune left behind by the sovereign, He had managed to assimilate a part of its aura for Lei Long. Having been stabbed through by the sovereign's sword, Long Chen had a profound understanding of what made that sword so terrifying. He had hoped for Lei Long to be able to imitate it. Since the heavenly Daos were able to imitate the sovereign's techniques, then Lei Long should be capable of the same. Unfortunately, reality was far from his fanciful thoughts. The rune had just been a mark of the heavenly Daos, and the sovereign aura had vanished with the fading away of his clone. Fortunately, he had been clever and had Lei Long absorb it with him. As a result, Lei Long managed to imitate the slightest bit of the sovereign's aura, but that slightest bit was enough to allow Lei Long's attacks to become incomparably sharper. That was why Lei Long had not participated in the battle after the tribulation. Long Chen had conserved it as a trump card. Even when hunting down Tian Xiezi, Long Chen didn't think that he was worth using that trump card. This trump card was why Long Chen dared to charge into the corrupt god cemetery so recklessly. Today's the day for you to become famous. It'll be up to you. Long Chen jumped onto Lei Long's head and laughed. As a reply, Lei Long let out a heaven-shaking roar. Lightning exploded in every direction, and the entire corrupt god cemetery quaked. With Lei Long at the center, one grave after another exploded. After the tribulation, Lei Long had gained its own true dragon pressure. It seemed that this tribulation had allowed Lei Long to awaken some kind of mysterious energy, making it into a dragon. Be suppressed. Tian Xiezi roared. He had never imagined that Long Chen's lightning dragon would grow to such a terrifying level. In all his calculations, this had never entered the equation. His manifestation quivered, and the corrupt god ancient tower came smashing toward them. Boom! With a flick of Lei Long's tail, the tower was sent flying. Its tail was like a heavenly whip tearing through the void, smashing apart laws. Opening its mouth, Lei Long shot out another giant sword. It didn't want to be entangled with the corrupt god ancient tower. Its only target was Tian Xiezi. Tian Xiezi's manifestation waved a hand, and the spear that had been sent flying returned, shooting toward the sword. Boom! The lightning sword exploded, but the figure in Tian Xiezi's manifestation was also forced back. Even his manifestation of the corrupt god wasn't able to keep up with Lei Long so easily. Ninth form of heaven corruptor, soul drawer. Tian Xiezi's face twisted malevolently. Chains shot out of the forehead of his manifestation, binding him and pulling him inside. Tian Xiezi's flesh and blood dispersed throughout his manifestation. His manifestation was infected with his aura as it came to life. That giant manifestation suddenly opened its mouth. Tian Xiezi's voice was hoarse but still contained dense killing intent. Long Chen, I already said that I am the ruler of this world. You aren't qualified to fight me. Tian Xiezi had actually used his own soul and spirit blood to control his manifestation. His manifestation waved a hand, and all the laws of the corrupt god cemetery moved with it. A spear pierced toward Long Chen. I'm not qualified? Then I won't bother with you. Lei Long, kill him, said Long Chen. Boom. Lei Long's giant tail whipped toward the corrupt god ancient tower from another direction, and a dragon claw reached toward the blood-colored spear. Lei Long let out a furious roar, and its terrifying aura caused the world to shake. It was possible to see the laws of the corrupt god cemetery bounce off of it, unable to suppress it. Lei Long grabbed the spear and tried to pull it away. Tian Xiezi fought back with his manifestation. One person and one dragon began a competition of strength. Their immense power caused the surrounding space to distort. Black qi continued to pour into Tian Xiezi's back. The entire corrupt god cemetery's power was supporting him. However, as Lei Long unleashed its light, the black qi was gradually dispersed. The power supporting Tian Xiezi was silently stripped away. Although Lei Long could only control the slightest aura of a sovereign, something that couldn't even count as a hair of their power, just that little bit when combined with Lei Long's tribulation lightning nature was enough to suppress Tian Xiezi here. How can this be? Tian Xiezi let out a soundless roar inside his heart. The corrupt god cemetery's power could basically be called unlimited. As a divine son, he had the corrupt god's approval. He was the only one in the corrupt path capable of freely entering the corrupt god cemetery and the only one capable of using the cemetery's power. Here he was a god. But Lei Long's attacks now contained the aura of a sovereign, weakening the effect of the laws here. Furthermore, Lei Long's attacks were gradually wearing down his connection with the laws of this place, reducing his power. He was so furious he felt like his lungs might explode. Work hard, Tian Xiezi. I look favorably upon you. With your talent and aptitude, if you train for another 10,000 years, you'll be close to winning, called out Long Chen from atop Lei Long's head. Long Chen had no intention of interfering. He had left everything to Lei Long, while he silently recovered his own energy. He also wanted to see just how powerful Lei Long was. At the same time, he cried that it was a pity Lei Long hadn't been able to fully absorb that rune from the sovereign's clone. If that had happened, then without him having to lift a single finger, he would probably be able to sweep through the world. However, when he thought of Sovereign Mo Li's final words to him, he felt uneasy. Sovereign Mo Li had said that the clone of him was in the same realm as Long Chen. In other words, that sovereign clone had only been at the peak of the Life Star realm, but his power had been horrifying. Long Chen hadn't even been close to matching him. That was Long Chen's first defeat within the same realm, and it had been a miserable one at that. Furthermore, he knew that Sovereign Mo Li hadn't even used his full power. Despite that, he had still been defeated. He also had a question. The Sovereign's karma had manifested as an opponent during his heavenly tribulation. However, the Sovereign had helped him cheat. In other words, a Sovereign was a figure who stood above the heavenly dais. How could people on that level die? It made no sense. Boom. A powerful explosion knocked Long Chen out of his thoughts. The blood-colored spear had actually been torn apart. Its destruction was accompanied by a mournful wail from its item spirit. Lei Long pounced on Tian Xiezi, its sharp claws dragging through the air. Every clash with Tian Xiezi's giant manifestation caused the world to shake. Long Chen began to shout directions from atop Lei Long's head. At first, Lei Long's fighting style was a bit awkward due to its immense power increase. As he directed it, its movements grew smoother, and its killing power grew more terrifying. As a result, Tian Xiezi was roaring furiously. Fuck! Tian Xiezi's eyes were about to spurt flames. He had tried several times to retreat and use the corrupt god ancient tower to block Lei Long while he prepared one of his big moves, but Lei Long didn't give him that chance. It stubbornly clung to a clash of physical bodies. Due to Lei Long's aura, a portion of the corrupt god cemetery's laws were stripped away from him, making him unable to unleash his full potential. With Long Chen's directions, its attacks grew sharper and more difficult to block. 4 claws repeatedly came at him, along with a dragon tail. Sometimes there would even be a strange attack or a wave of dragon breath that forced Tian Xiezi back. He was so furious that he felt like he might cough up blood. I remember someone saying about being the ruler of this world, something about how no one could beat him, something about how even the heaven elders of the divine families would be crushed to death like ants if they came here. My memory isn't that good, so do you remember who said that? What kind of heroic figure said such grand words? I'd really like to know, asked Long Chen. You. Tian Xiezi was incredibly infuriated. Even knowing that Long Chen was trying to infuriate him didn't help because he had truly said those words. That slap was incredibly painful. He had already used a secret art so that the outside world could see and hear what he said. He had only said that the heaven elders wouldn't be able to leave if they came here, not that he could crush them like ants. Now that the heaven elders were hearing such things, that didn't bode well for his future. That's nonsense, I never dash. Tian Xiezi calmed himself and tried to explain, but Lei Long unleashed a furious tempest of attacks that left him with no chance to speak. You don't even dare to accept the words you said yourself? I really look down on you more and more. Long Chen shook his head contemptuously. Bastard, you are forcing me. Tian Xiezi finally ran out of patience. The corrupt god ancient tower suddenly vanished. Another giant gate appeared behind Tian Xiezi. Long Chen was startled. It was a similar gate to the one they had entered from, but this one had a giant tower-shaped notch in it. What? You want to summon the corrupt god's bones to fight for you? Alright, Show me just how hard the corrupt god's bones are and whether they're harder than my saber. Long Chen fearlessly looked at the gate. In reality, the reason Long Chen had chased Tian Xiezi here was to probe the secrets of the corrupt god cemetery. His curiosity was piqued by this gate, and while he appeared indifferent, he was extremely wary. You blasphemed the corrupt god. You won't have a good end. Tian Xiezi's face twisted at this blasphemy. Boom. The corrupt god ancient tower appeared inside the giant notch. It fit inside perfectly. The corrupt god ancient tower is the key to open the gate? The experts outside were all startled. The two doors of the gate slowly opened inwards. Red light shone from inside, appearing particularly blinding. My eyes. One of the ancient family alliance's disciples suddenly covered their eyes. Blood flowed out from between their fingers. Following the first disciples, more and more disciples cried out. Their eyes were bleeding and there was no way for them to stop it. Even circulating heavenly Tao energy was useless. Disciples below Nether Passage, don't look. The corrupt god's curse is inside. If you stop now, you can still preserve your eyes. Shouted Chu Jianying. Most of the people that had come were Nether Passage experts, but a few others had been drawn over by the disturbance. Amongst the righteous path in particular, quite a few young disciples had begged their seniors to bring them. There might be no problem with their seniors protecting them at other times, but the light coming from inside that gate was something that made those below the Nether Passage realm feel like their eyes were tearing apart. It seems that the legends are true. The corrupt god cemetery is split into inner and outer regions. The inner region contains the successive generations of the corrupt god's true body. I've heard that only gods are qualified to be buried inside there. However, there was one person that was an exception. That person was Xie Wentian's ancestor, the corrupt emperor, Xie Qianmo. The old man spoke quietly as he looked at the gate slowly open. Xie Qianmo was the most brilliant figure in the corrupt path's history. Due to him, the Xie family had remained the dominant power within the corrupt path, with no one able to shake their position. The regretful thing about the three emperors was that they were born at the wrong time. Every one of them was born in the same generation as a sovereign. In the end, their brilliant light was drowned by the radiance of the sovereigns. They could only become one of the accompanying stars of the bright moon. Despite that, Xie Qianmo's name was well known amongst the senior generation. Although he was a follower of the corrupt god and never took the name of emperor, everyone, including the corrupt path and the righteous path, acknowledged that he had the power to stand alongside the Peng Emperor and the Blood Emperor. Blood qi dispersed from inside the gate, and the red light infected the world. Just looking at the scene, it was possible to smell the scent of endless blood. Even though the martial heaven continent was currently sunny, people felt a chill. Even the Nether Passage experts were starting to feel an ache in their eyes. At the same time, they felt some kind of summons. Their souls were trying to leave their bodies. That was such a frightening feeling that they instantly turned away. Only the corrupt path's disciples continued to stare, their faces full of worship. Even Xie Wentian was amongst them. All the corrupt path's experts knelt toward the gate and kowtowed reverently, chanting some kind of scripture. Finally, the inner gate was fully open. Right in front of it was a platform, and there was a person sitting cross-legged on it. Upon seeing that person, Chu Jianying, the old man, Li Tianxian, and the others cried out in shock. Xie Qianmo. Upon seeing that figure, everyone was shocked. He wore blood-colored robes with shoulder-length hair and sharp cheeks. He looked young, surprisingly so. His eyes were closed like he was meditating there, and there was a strange sword resting on his knees. Heavens, that's the corrupt emperor, Xie Qianmo, the most mysterious expert of the corrupt path's history. The junior generation of disciples didn't know that much about the corrupt emperor, but of the senior generation, many had seen his image. It was said that the corrupt emperor's talent was so amazing that he had soared like a shooting star, sweeping through all the experts within the same generation. He reached the peak of the martial path and became an emperor before he was even 100 years of age. Just as the corrupt emperor was unrivaled and the righteous path was on the verge of destruction, Sovereign Mo Li was born and rose. Although the corrupt path brought out their full power to stop his growth, Sovereign Emoli still rose to the very peak and defeated the corrupt emperor. After that battle, the corrupt emperor had never appeared again. Some people said that he had been so badly wounded by the sovereign that he had died not long after getting back. Others said he had gone into seclusion to cultivate until he was stronger than the sovereign, wanting to wipe away that humiliation. In any case, the corrupt emperor silently vanished after that battle. Later on, the sovereign had led the martial heaven continent against the invading world's experts, and that brilliance had completely drowned out the corrupt emperor's light, causing him to be forgotten. It was the later descendants who had been looking at the history of the continent that brought up his existence again. They called him the corrupt emperor as, after all, his power qualified him to have that title. Below the 5 sovereigns, the 3 emperors were the strongest. As for Shi Changxing being the Stone Emperor, that was a title he had bestowed upon himself. Although his cultivation realm had reached that level, compared to the corrupt emperor, Peng Emperor, and Blood Emperor, he was still lacking a little bit of prestige and maturity. That was why the continent did not recognize him as an emperor. Hearing the startled cries of the senior generation, the junior disciples realized who this young man was. When the gate opened and Qianmo's figure appeared, Long Chen didn't have Lei Long continue attacking. He stood in front of the gate, quietly looking at that figure. Although Long Chen didn't recognize the corrupt emperor, he sensed a pressure that felt like the weight of the entire cosmos was pressing down on him. Tian Xiezi smashed himself in the chest with his fist, coughing up a mouthful of blood. He grabbed that blood and waved his hand. As a result, a blood rune appeared in the air and then exploded. A resounding sound rang throughout heaven and earth when that blood rune exploded. The young man slowly opened his eyes. Upon seeing that, Chu Jianying and the others felt their hearts stop beating. The corrupt emperor wasn't dead? Qianmo slowly opened his eyes, and strange runes flowed within them. It was only after a long moment that his eyes focused. He looked at Tian Xiezi in front of him and then at Long Chen who was outside the gate. He frowned. "Why do you want to disturb the successive heroic spirits of the corrupt gods?" demanded Qianmo. His voice contained the unquestionable might of an emperor. "Master Qianmo, disciple is Tian Xiezi." Tian Xiezi hastily bowed. He didn't call Qianmo the corrupt emperor because due to their devotion to the corrupt god, they could not call themselves an emperor. No need to say any more. As a divine son, against someone in the same realm, you were chased all the way into the corrupt god cemetery and now wish to disturb the corrupt god's heroic spirits. As a divine son, you are useless. The corrupt emperor's gaze was cold. "Master Qianmo, it's Long Chen." Even as a divine son, Tian Xiezi felt great fear and trepidation toward the corrupt emperor. Defeat is defeat. If you can't even admit to such a thing and need to find excuses, it just makes you more useless. The corrupt emperor snorted and ignored Tian Xiezi. He focused on Long Chen. Upon seeing the lightning dragon below Long Chen's feet, he nodded. "So that's the case. It's the aura of Emoli. Are you Emoli's disciple?" "No. Sovereign Emoli is my big brother." Long Chen shook his head. Evil Moon was still lazily resting on his shoulder. Even facing the corrupt emperor, Long Chen wasn't affected by his pressure. Perhaps it was due to having faced a sovereign before, but despite the corrupt emperor's frightening pressure, Long Chen felt that it lacked the sovereign's will that caused everyone to submit. What nonsense! Emoli was born through the entire world's karmic luck. He has no father or mother. How could you be his brother? Snorted the corrupt emperor. Hearing that, Long Chen was startled. He had never heard of such a thing. The experts outside were also shocked. This secret was also something they didn't know. "We weren't blood brothers, but we called each other brothers." "So what? Is that not allowed?" demanded Long Chen. He was starting to feel irritated by the corrupt emperor's appearance of supremacy. As for Tian Xiezi, he was quivering to the side, too affected by the corrupt emperor's aura to even say anything. The corrupt emperor looked at Long Chen. He snorted, "You really are stupid. Emoli was born through karmic luck. A whole era's karmic luck was 80% occupied by him alone. I took a tenth, while the rest was split by the remaining heavenly geniuses. The reason I wasn't as strong as him wasn't due to my talent, but simply because he was blessed by the heavens. The only difference between us was karmic luck. It is precisely because of how much karmic luck Mo Li occupied that it affected the function of the rest of the world. The heavenly Daos grew chaotic, resulting in more and more karma. As his cultivation base increased, it only grew worse. Anyone who got close to him was destroyed by the heavenly Daos, so the successive generations of sovereigns were always solitary figures. Those who got close to them were affected by so much karma that they ended up dying. Others could only show their respect for them from a distance. You call him brother? No wonder you charged into the corrupt god cemetery. There must be karma involved that's drawing you to your death. Hearing those words, the Beitang family's expert standing outside the gate became dumbfounded. Beitang Rushuang looked at Nangong Zuyu with wide eyes. That's why. Sovereign Ziyang noticed that problem back then, and so, you let the Nangong family be blamed for so many years? I hereby apologize to the Nangong family on behalf of the Beitang family. Beitang Rushuang got on her knees and kowtowed. The grudge of so many years was resolved in an instant. All the Beitang family's people felt guilty. Back in the day, Sovereign Ziyang had had a romantic relationship with the Beitang family's heavenly genius, but due to the interference from the Nangong family's people, those lovers ended up apart. However, hearing what the corrupt emperor had just said, they immediately linked it to that mystery. At that time, Sovereign Ziyang had not said much about that matter, resulting in a grudge growing between the Nangong and Beitang families. According to reason, a sovereign wouldn't intentionally cause such a conflict between families, but he never brought up that matter or explained it. Now they realized the truth. At first, when Sovereign Ziyang's relationship with the Beitang family's heavenly genius had started, he was still young and not so powerful. He most likely hadn't sensed the effect of his karma. He must have sensed it later and made his decision. As for why he didn't explain, it was definitely related to karma. Perhaps if he had, the two families would have fallen into desperate straits. The Beitang family's experts were ashamed of their actions, with Beitang Rushuang kowtowing. However, Nangong Zuyu immediately pulled her up. Beitang Rushuang's voice shuddered. Are you not accepting my apology? In the beginning, the two of them had also been in conflict, but ever since Long Chen appeared, they had started to get along better. Neither of them wished to bring up the conflict between their two families, so they always avoided that topic. With the righteous path in trouble especially, they had to stand on the same side. In private, they even called each other sisters. Nangong Zuyu was not necessarily wrong to refuse to accept such an apology. This misunderstanding had existed between the two families for so many years. The Nangong family had been insulted and humiliated behind their backs for countless years. That kind of injustice could not be wiped away by a kowtow. No, it was the Nangong family that was wrong. A wrong is a wrong. Even if those ancestors did it to shield her, they should have done it the right way. The sovereign was the strongest expert of that time and capable of seeing through the river of time. For him to not mention anything, he must have known that the two of our families would be able to resolve our differences eventually. Now that we have, let's let it go. The burden that our ancestors left behind can be left in the past. We will now use our hands to create our own history. Nangong Zuyu held Beitang Rushuang's hand. Hearing that, countless experts felt emotional over Nangong Zuyu's actions. She was truly worthy of being the heavenly genius that the Nangong family had raised. A grudge that had lasted tens of thousands of years was wiped away with just a few words. Just how vast was her heart? That was someone capable of leading people, someone possessing both boldness and charisma. In the future, if Big Sister needs help, then I will accompany you through blades or fire, promised Beitang Rushuang. These words also moved people. After all, her words represented the Beitang family. She also had great daring, having tied the fate of her entire family to the Nangong family. The two of them would advance or retreat together. They were both figures that made the other heavenly geniuses present blush with shame. Just at that moment, divine light grew within the corrupt god cemetery, drawing everyone's attention back there. The seated corrupt emperor actually began to stand. As he stood up, Long Chen's saber appeared before him. His nerves tightened. Just as the corrupt emperor stood, the energy of the world condensed into one point and crashed onto Long Chen. It was as though the weight of the entire world was condensed on where Long Chen was standing. He felt a strange energy trying to crush him. However, beneath his feet, Lei Long was completely unaffected. Long Chen realized this was not the power of the laws here but a spiritual pressure that wanted to crush his will. Holding Evil Moon tightly, Long Chen's figure was as straight as an iron spear. Even in the face of the corrupt emperor's pressure, he didn't cower. Who cared about a corrupt emperor? Long Chen was someone who called a sovereign brother, and the sovereign was someone who could crush the corrupt emperor. HM? The brat can't fight any longer, so the senior is coming out? Asked Long Chen lightly. The corrupt emperor shook his head. Even though I am already dead and just a trace of a discarnate soul, you aren't worth me doing anything. You have Mo Li's aura on you, so I'll treat you as his brother. A lightning house pet isn't enough for you to be so arrogant. The corrupt emperor turned to Tian Xiezi. I will transmit a portion of my techniques to you. If you can kill him, I will pass on my entire inheritance to you. But if you still can't beat him, it means you aren't qualified to continue the corrupt god's will, and I won't save you. The corrupt emperor pressed a finger against Tian Xiezi's forehead. The latter's body trembled, and his aura began to transform. Blood-colored runes began shooting out of the cemetery, merging with him. Many thanks, Master Qianmo. Tian Xiezi gratefully bowed to the corrupt emperor and then turned to Long Chen with a confident smile. Long Chen, face your death. Tian Xiezi's manifestation shook. His aura had changed from before. It now contained a trace of an emperor's aura. With his spear destroyed, he sent a fist smashing toward Long Chen. This punch seemed like it was supported by the entire world. Just you? Give up and have that old ghost come out. Long Chen sneered and Lei Long vanished. His divine ring shuddered as he raised Evil Moon high into the air. Black and white scales appeared on his body. This was the phenomenon from the merging of the Azure Dragon battle armor and the Evil Dragon's power. Before this, the black had been clearly a bit faint in comparison to the white. That was because an Evil Dragon's power could not compare to the power of the Azure Dragon. However, today, with Long Chen having advanced to the Nether Passage realm, another level of the seal-locking Evil Moon had been undone. With both forms of power boosting him, Long Chen's power soared. Lightning burst into existence around Evil Moon as a giant saber image rose. Long Chen added Lei Long's power to Evil Moon. A resounding dragon roar rang out, one that was 3 voices in one, a lighting dragon, an evil dragon, and an azure dragon. Long Chen's saber crashed down with such power that Tian Xiezi's expression changed. Having obtained the support of the corrupt god cemetery and some techniques of the corrupt emperor, he had thought he could crush Long Chen with a wave of his hand. Even the corrupt emperor's pupils shrank when he saw Long Chen's attack. Boom! Tian Xiezi screamed as his manifestation was blown apart. Half his body vanished, with half remaining, which was covered in cracks and on the verge of shattering. The corrupt emperor grabbed Tian Xiezi, saving his life. If he hadn't, the shockwaves would have blown Tian Xiezi's crumbling body apart. Although he had said that he wouldn't save him, that had just been a threat to make him use his full power. This is the power of the corrupt emperor? After spouting such crap, you eat it back without saying a word? That is something that even the sovereigns can't accomplish, sneered Long Chen upon seeing the corrupt emperor eat his own words. The corrupt emperor's expression darkened. In his life, he didn't know how many heavenly geniuses he had killed. His life had been full of glorious legends. This was his first time having to eat his own words. After all, Tian Xiezi was a divine son, someone chosen by the corrupt god. He couldn't just watch as he was killed. On the other hand, Long Chen's naked insult made killing intent finally appear in his eyes. However, before he could make a move, Long Chen suddenly charged inside the inner gate of the corrupt god cemetery, courting death. Seeing that, the corrupt emperor was stunned and enraged. He immediately slashed the sword on his knees at Long Chen to prevent him from entering. If you really had the power from your peak, you would have immediately confined me instead of letting that idiot Tian Xiezi try to stop me. You knew from the start that Tian Xiezi wasn't a match for me, sneered Long Chen. From the first moment he had seen the corrupt emperor, he had felt things to be off. The corrupt emperor had acted as if Long Chen was nothing, as if he was definitely dead. However, he didn't sense any feeling of mortal danger from him. In other words, the corrupt emperor himself didn't possess the power to kill him. After thinking about it, Long Chen had guessed that he was trying to scare him away. If that was the case, then there was definitely some secret within the tomb. Furthermore, this attack the corrupt emperor had launched at Long Chen was launched to the area in front of him. In other words, he just wanted to stop him and didn't have the power to kill him in one blow. Split the heavens 8. Boom. The sword light that the corrupt emperor had summoned in front of him was torn, and Long Chen charged through. Originally, he should have used Evelmun's divine abilities to get by, but Evelmun's technique covered a wide area and would have its power dispersed throughout the entire sword light to destroy it all. But all he needed to do was pierce a hole. After all, that was the corrupt emperor. Even if he was just the slightest discarnate soul, Long Chen wasn't sure of crushing his full-strength attack. Furthermore, Long Chen had to conserve energy. He had barely recovered to about 50% of his energy. With the smallest price thanks to the barrier-piercing effects of Split the Heavens, Long Chen got past the corrupt emperor's barrier and entered the inner region. The experts outside were all stunned to see that Long Chen was able to get by the corrupt emperor. Wasn't it said that the only ones capable of fighting the emperors were sovereigns? However, Elder Long nodded. Long Chen's got guts. Even in the face of sovereigns and emperors, he can muster the will to fight. Others can't even raise their weapons in front of the glory of the sovereigns and emperors. Even if they could manage to summon the will to fight, they wouldn't even be able to unleash half their power. But Long Chen is completely unaffected, added another Heaven Elder, nodding with praise. Long Chen charged in, and the blood-colored inner region was lit up by his lightning. He saw one giant stone coffin after another. The corrupt emperor's expression changed. He suddenly pointed a finger. A ray of light shot out, not toward Long Chen but the screen up in the air. Boom. The screen that Tian Xiezi had summoned so that others could see what was happening inside exploded. The secrets of the inner region could not be revealed to outsiders. Suddenly, the inner gate slammed shut. The corrupt emperor, Tian Xiezi, and Long Chen were locked inside. Long Chen ignored it. He appraised the situation within the inner cemetery. This space wasn't as large as outside. There were 16 giant coffins scattered in every direction, seemingly according to some pattern. It seems that the corrupt gods' corpses are here. Long Chen didn't have much time, so he rushed over to the closest coffin. This coffin was like a giant mountain. Standing at the bottom, he grabbed it with both hands and pulled. "Get up!" Long Chen's arms bulged as he tried to pull up the coffin. It was as heavy as a star, but it slowly began to rise. "Bastard, what are you doing?" roared Tian Xiezi. "What do you think? Have you not heard that bandits never go home empty-handed? I went through all the trouble of coming here, so no matter what I have to get something in return. Don't be so stingy. You have 16 coffins and I'm only taking one. Be happy," shouted Long Chen. You fucking madman." Tian Xiezi couldn't help cursing. He had never cursed before, but this was too much. He had heard that Long Chen dared to do anything, but he even dared to take the coffin of a corrupt god? Was that a giant joke? Master Qianmo, Tian Xiezi could only turn to the corrupt emperor. However, upon seeing one of his hands in a special seal, he shut his mouth. The giant coffin was really picked up by Long Chen. His arms trembled from the effort. It was unknown just what kind of material it was made of. It was precisely because it wasn't ordinary that he wanted it. He might not recognize the material, but Guoran definitely would. Perhaps he could smelt it into some legendary divine material. "Get in!" Long Chen activated the primal chaos bead. However, just then the earth shuddered. Only at this moment did he realize that at the other side of the coffin, there was a giant chain connecting it to the core of this region. At the core was another platform. There was someone sitting on top of it. Long Chen barely got a look at that figure when his heart turned icy cold. He shot back. A ray of light shot out from the stone platform, flying right past Long Chen. An icy sensation filled him. He felt like his skin was about to rip apart. Long Chen narrowly avoided the attack. As a result, it struck the gate and unleashed ripples that spread throughout the cemetery. What is that? Long Chen's expression changed, and another ray of light shot out from a different angle. Unable to avoid this one, he slashed Evil Moon at it. Bang! Long Chen's arm shook, and the webbing between his thumb and forefingers split open. Flying back, he saw that these lights were coming from below the core platform. It was only at this moment that Long Chen realized there was a giant black lotus suspended in the air above the core region, linking together the 16 coffins. The black lotus had many petals, and every petal had a person embedded into it. Those people had their hands clasped together. Their bodies were like withered corpses. At the base of the lotus were 16 chains connecting to the 16 coffins. It was no wonder he had been unable to take a coffin. At this moment, it was the black lotus unleashing rays of light at him. Long Chen glanced toward the corrupt emperor to see him forming seals. So it was you. Long Chen, you're sharp to have been able to realize that I can't fight you in my current state. But you were too careless. Even if I am a discarnate soul, even if I offered up 99% of my power, even if the wearing of time has weakened me, I am still the guardian of this cemetery. Killing you is still easy. The Devil Lotus Divine Throne has locked onto you. As it awakens, its power will grow. I only have less than 1/10,000th of my original power, but even if I was at my peak, I would need a large amount of time to stop this lotus. So, you can peacefully face your death, said the corrupt emperor indifferently. As he said, the black lotus continued to grow stronger like a wild beast awakening. Its attacks grew sharper and more concentrated. Long Chen dodged 7 in a row before his expression changed. That lotus throne made him feel a familiar aura. That aura was something he had sensed from the Nether God's throne. Although the aura between the two had fundamental differences, it definitely had enough power to kill him. Its terrifying aura continued to grow. After dodging one attack, Long Chen stamped down on the coffin, surprisingly charging toward the lotus throne. Long Chen's target was the person sitting on the central platform. His back was facing him, so he couldn't see his face. Evil Moon slashed toward him. Boom! A layer of divine light appeared over the person's body just as Long Chen was about to strike him. Evil Moon bounced right off, and a terrifying ripple spread in every direction. Long Chen was struck head-on by that ripple. He coughed up blood and cracks appeared on his body. He almost died right there and then, horrifying him. Just who was that person? At the same time as Long Chen was shocked, the corrupt emperor's pupils shrank upon seeing this. Just what kind of origin did Long Chen have to possess a physical body that wasn't blasted apart by that counterattack? More and more lights flew toward Long Chen from the Black Lotus. Its attacks grew stronger and faster. If struck by any one of them, there was a chance he might be instantly dead. Fuck, what a scam. It seems I can't get anything good today. Well, I'll treat it as a scouting mission and wait for when I come with them on yen. Long Chen used the celestial lightning body blink to dodge. As the lotus awakened, its power began to compress the space around him. Any longer and he would no longer be able to dodge. Long Chen suddenly unleashed a slash at the corrupt emperor and Tian Xiezi. The corrupt emperor shook his head. Although my current state is weak, it's not so weak that you can kill me. The corrupt emperor pointed a finger, and a protective light appeared around him and Tian Xiezi. Layers of runes stacked up within the light. Long Chen's saber merely caused the barrier to quiver once. All his power was instantly sucked away by it. Long Chen, in front of Master Qianmo, you are just an ant. Even all your power isn't enough to harm a single hair of his, taunted Tian Xiezi. Idiot, why would I care about the hair of a dead person? Sneered Long Chen. He took out a strange object and suddenly thrust it forward. That object was the door knocker from the gates of hell. Holding the ring, he smashed the knocker forward. The corrupt emperor's expression changed when he recognized the carving of the knocker. He couldn't help exclaiming, A Purgatory Yama spirit. Purgatory Yama spirits were monsters that protected purgatory. It was also known as the three-headed purgatory dog. However, its other heads were located below its neck and were normally just two marks. Only when it fought would it manifest its three heads. Those three heads represented three different laws: heaven, earth, and man. Longchen had no idea about that. All he knew was that something from the gates of hell would definitely be good at warding off evil. He still didn't know that those two knockers were part of the seal that had been suppressing a terrifying divine beast. Even the corrupt emperor had only heard of Purgatory Yama spirits and had no idea about the origin of the door knockers. All he knew was that there was no way such a thing could exist on the martial heaven continent. Boom! The barrier shattered instantly. The effect was even better than Longchen had expected. The corrupt emperor retreated several steps. His body seemed to fade slightly. Tian Xiezi was horrified. He had absolute confidence in the corrupt emperor, so it was unimaginable to him for Longchen to break the corrupt emperor's defenses. "My target is you." Longchen slashed his saber at Tian Xiezi. The corrupt emperor slashed his sword, blocking Longchen's saber. Longchen snorted and sent a foot smashing into Tian Xiezi's neck. At the same time, he smashed the knocker at the corrupt emperor, who surprisingly used his hilt to block the attack. This time, there was no amazing effect. Longchen's arm shuddered, and the knocker almost flew out of his grasp. Starting, Longchen retreated, swinging Evil Moon in defense. As for the corrupt emperor, he seemed to have predicted how easily he could block the knocker, and his sword turned, slicing toward Longchen's waist. In the end, an emperor was an emperor. Even if he had less than 1/10,000th of his original power, he still had his combat experience. He combined offense and defense into one, and despite Longchen clearly managing to avoid the sword, it was like a viper spitting poison. A flicker of light extended out of it, slicing open Longchen's waist. Longchen was startled. If it weren't for his dragon scales, he would have been cut in two. This was an existence that could challenge sovereigns. Longchen shot back, avoiding the next two attacks from the Black Lotus. "Watch out!" shouted the corrupt emperor. He vanished from his original location. Tian Xiezi suddenly realized that he was flying in an arc, while Longchen was shooting through the air. They were going to intersect. Longchen had no intention of killing the corrupt emperor. Although it was a nice thought, it wasn't possible. The corrupt emperor wasn't that weak even in his weakened state. He was an apex existence. Even just a trace of his discarnate soul was extremely dangerous. It wasn't worth it for Longchen to risk his life on such a thing. From the start, his target had been Tian Xiezi. Even though he had been injured by the corrupt emperor just now, things were still going according to plan. Tian Xiezi roared and summoned his final dregs of energy to punch at Longchen. As for Longchen, he swung his hand naturally, slapping him in the face. Tian Xiezi had less than half the combat potential of his peak state and was no match for Longchen. As a result, he spun through the air from the slap, and Longchen grabbed his leg. He switched out Evil Moon for the knocker again and smashed it at the gate. Boom. The gate was incredibly tough, but this unremarkable knocker still smashed a hole into it. So that's how it works. Longchen was now sure that the knocker had its own laws, and those laws had a terrifying destructive aspect to them. However, they were useless against attacks that didn't contain their own laws. The corrupt emperor's previous attack was the best proof. Without hesitation, Longchen flew through, dragging Tian Xiezi with him. A dragon cry rang out and lightning filled the outer cemetery. Within this sea of lightning, Longchen could essentially teleport. With a single step, he arrived at the outer gate. One more step and he could leave the corrupt god cemetery. Suddenly, a flash of sword light appeared along with a cry. Longchen's hand lightened as he stepped through the gate. His vision darkened and then brightened once more as he appeared outside the corrupt god cemetery. He looked back to check on Tian Xiezi. He found that he was gone, and he was just holding a bloody leg. There were countless experts in front of the gate. When Longchen had charged into the inner gate, the corrupt emperor had cut off their vision. Just as the corrupt experts were smiling at Longchen's misfortune, Longchen came out alive and well. Furthermore, he was holding a leg that caused a wave of shock as people recognized it as Tian Xiezi's. Fuck that bastard! Looking at the leg, Long Chen raged and flung it into the air. It then exploded into bloody mist. Even now, he didn't know how the corrupt emperor had managed to do this. Everything had been calculated perfectly by him. In the end, he had even been willing to unleash all of Lei Long's power to summon a lightning domain to reach the outer gate in an instant, just to capture Tian Xiezi alive. But the corrupt emperor had still managed to snatch Tian Xiezi away. Long Chen's expression was ugly at having been beaten by a discarnate soul of the corrupt emperor. However, on the other hand, everyone was stunned by his reaction. They didn't know what had just happened inside. The image had been cut off just as Long Chen charged into the inner region despite the corrupt emperor trying to stop him, and then he came out holding Tian Xiezi's leg. Even Elder Long and the others were shocked. In front of the corrupt emperor, he had still managed to cut off Tian Xiezi's leg. He had practically ignored the existence of the corrupt emperor. Long Chen suddenly turned and charged back toward the gate, causing everyone to jump. Bang! The runes on the gate made Long Chen bounce back. The corrupt god cemetery had been closed from the inside, and no one else could enter. Long Chen almost coughed up blood from the impact. After all the battles, his body had reached its limit. The corrupt emperor's last attack, which had sliced through his waist, contained its own power that was erasing his life energy. Even the primal chaos space's life energy was unable to heal the wound, only able to temporarily suppress it. Also, the impact from being repelled from the gate had caused it to tear open again. He really needed to find a place to heal. Long Chen had no choice but to give up on charging back in. He suddenly turned to the corrupt path's experts. His fury instantly soared. Even if he couldn't kill the big ones, killing some extras was good too. Warriors of the Dragonblood Legion, slaughter the corrupt path's people, shouted Long Chen. He was the first to charge forward despite being covered in blood and having a wound on his waist. His saber slammed down toward Xie Wenyan and the others. Over 10,000 swords came out of their sheaths at the same time. With Long Chen's orders, the Dragonblood warriors no longer cared about the Heaven Elders from the divine families. They charged. With the divine families present, you still dare to be wild? Demanded Ye Yaochen angrily. However, he found that Long Chen and the rest of the Dragonblood Legion were completely ignoring him. Bastards! You're asking for it. Ye Yaochen furiously prepared to unleash an attack when Elder Long appeared in front of him. Elder Yi, this was started by Yi Bencheng. As a fellow member of the Yi family, it wouldn't be appropriate for you to interfere. What are you saying? Ye Yaochen's face was frighteningly gloomy. You should leave things here to me. If you're busy, you can leave first, said Elder Long lightly. You? Ye Yaochen pointed at Elder Long, shuddering with fury. That was clearly telling him to scram. All right, fine. We'll see who wins in the future. Ye Yaochen took a single step, vanishing from sight. Long Chen, count yourself tough this time. But my corrupt path's foundation isn't something you can imagine. Just wait. Your nightmare will soon descend. Xie Wenyan sneered. The void behind him suddenly split open and formed a giant vortex that sucked in the corrupt path's experts. They vanished, leaving behind only Xie Wenyan's voice echoing through the air. Long Chen and the others pounced on empty air. The corrupt path had managed to run. Suddenly, a bout of dizziness made him feel like the world was spinning. Meng Qi caught Long Chen as he collapsed. Long Chen, are you all right? Chu Yao immediately came over to help him recover. She found that there was extensive damage to his meridians. They had almost reached the point of crumbling, and he could no longer fight. Long Chen was also aware of his condition, but he had to act tough until the end. If the corrupt path has run, then fine. Exterminate the Kunpeng race. Long Chen took a deep breath. The corrupt path and the righteous path's enmity was something that stretched back tens of thousands of years. He wasn't in a rush to get revenge on them. If they had run, then the Dragonblood Legion could start with the Xian beasts. Boss, you rest. Leave this to your brothers. Guoran saw how pale he was and led the charge against the Kunpeng race. Seeing the Dragon Blood Legion charging over so furiously, Pengzi and the others' expressions changed. He shouted, "Seniors of the divine families, are you going to allow the Dragon Blood Legion to slaughter the innocent so indiscriminately? All things have karma." Even during the time of the heavenly divine writ, the Xian beasts launched a sneak attack on the cloud-chasing heaven-swallowing sparrow race. "You've already ignored our rules. The bitter seed you planted results in the bitter fruit you reap. Even if it causes tears, you still have to eat it." "Sorry, but the divine families are powerless to interfere," said Elder Long. Upon hearing that, Pengzi's heart dropped. He suddenly turned to Pill Valley to see Yu Shaoyun not looking at him. He then looked at Di Long of the Ancient Family Alliance and saw that his eyes were closed in meditation as if he was unrelated to this matter. The most unacceptable thing to him, though, was that even Long Juansong of the ancient races had, at some point, brought the ancient races' experts away to retain a respectful distance from the Xian beasts. Even the ancient race's loyalty didn't stretch this far. "Kill!" The Dragon Blood Legion fell upon them. Guoran was the first to charge at Pengzi. However, before he could attack, a giant bone club came smashing down at Pengzi. Wild's furious roar rang out. "This one's mine." Wild's furious attack was met with Pengzi's full power defense, but he still hacked up blood. He was no Ye Yaochen, who was capable of using his hand to receive Wild's attack. Pengzi was injured in just one blow. Stars spun in his vision. This one attack from Wild caused the morale of the Xian beasts to crumble. "Kill!" The Dragonblood warriors and the cloud-chasing heaven-swallowing sparrow race's experts attacked. Their enmity with the Kunpeng race could no longer be resolved by any other means. The martyrs that had died to the Kunpeng race during these countless years would also not permit such a thing. Those who didn't participate in the attack against the cloud-chasing heaven-swallowing sparrow race should get away now. Today, the Dragonblood Legion and the cloud-chasing heaven-swallowing sparrow race are getting vengeance, and our only target is the Kunpeng race," announced Long Chen. The hesitating experts of the Xian beasts who were undecided about running or not instantly fled like the wind. "The Kunpeng race's conflict with the cloud-chasing heaven-swallowing sparrow race has nothing to do with our shadow devil leopard race," announced one of the leaders of the Xian beasts as he led his people away from the battlefield. "It has nothing to do with our wind wolf race. It has nothing to do with our blood ape race. It has nothing to do with our scarlet python race." In just a moment, the Xian beasts still standing behind the Kunpeng race had left due to Long Chen's words. The Xian beasts were arrogant, but they weren't so stupid as to not understand their current position. The divine families had chosen to look on without lifting a finger. Pill Valley, the Ancient Family Alliance, the ancient races, all their allies had chosen to ignore their plight. The ones that they were facing were the Dragonblood Legion, the Martial Heaven Continent's #1 Legion, the ones who had defeated even the Heavenly Dragon Legion. That was a killing legion that slaughtered their enemies without blinking. Although the Xian beasts had always had a hostile relationship with Long Chen, they all knew his character. He wouldn't go back on his word and attack them. As a result, the Xian beasts collapsed from the inside. In the end, the only ones staying with the Kunpeng race were the 9 Heavens Phoenix race and a few other loyal followers. Those were the races that had slaughtered countless experts of the cloud-chasing heaven-swallowing sparrow race in the past. Their hands were covered in their blood. Even if they surrendered, it would be useless. Pengzi managed to block 3 of Wild's attacks. On the 4th, his spear was knocked out of his hands, and the back of his head was smashed apart by Wild's club. His Yuan spirit shot out, trying to flee, but it was swallowed by a giant mouth. It was Cloud. After swallowing Pengzi's Yuan spirit, she let out a resounding cry, one that contained grief and sorrow for the fallen members of her race. With Pengzi dead, the grudge of countless years was finally settled, and all the accumulated years of resentment were unleashed now. The other members of the cloud-chasing heaven-swallowing race echoed her cry. "Kill!" With Pengzi dead, the Kunpeng race, the 9 Heavens Phoenix race, and the remaining experts of their side were unable to stop the Dragonblood Legion. They fled in every direction. A rain of blood followed as the dragon-blood warriors and the cloud-chasing heaven-swallowing sparrow races experts chased them down. Having lost their will to fight, the Xian beasts were unable to counterattack. As Long Chen watched the dragon-blood legion slaughter them, he didn't say a word. There was no need to say anything about mercy or letting off cornered enemies. There was no compassion to be had. This kind of enmity was so deep it had sunk into their bones and even their souls. This kind of enmity could only be settled when one side was destroyed. The cloud-chasing heaven-swallowing sparrow race couldn't possibly let off the Kunpeng race or their loyal followers, just like how the Kunpeng race and the others had never had mercy when they were hunting down the cloud-chasing heaven-swallowing sparrow race. The human race might be one to easily forget the past, but the Xian beasts were different. This kind of enmity was something that continued through their bloodlines. There was no way for them to forget it. Not good. Suddenly, Elder Long and the other heaven elders' expressions changed. A tablet on each of their waists was flashing rapidly. The 7 of them vanished at the same time. Elder Long and the others' disappearance gave everyone else a bad feeling. Suddenly, Chu Jianying let out a startled cry as her own tablet began flashing. When she checked it, her expression completely changed. Without a guard on the yin-yang world, the blood race has invaded the martial heaven continent. What? All the various experts' expressions sank. If the blood race managed to get onto the continent, countless people would be killed, and the situation would take an even worse turn in the future. That was because after killing people from the martial heaven continent, the blood race would steal their root qi and grow even stronger. We have to get over there. The old man grabbed Long Chen and dragged him off. In Long Chen's current state, he was afraid of Pill Valley and the others trying to kill him. Wild, eat later, shouted Long Chen. Wild was munching on a wing, even eating the feathers. It was a bloody sight. Hearing Long Chen's command, Wild put away Peng Wanli's corpse and came rushing over. Long Chen, are you all right? You were really vicious this time. I thought you were doomed several times. The old man had a hand on Long Chen's shoulder. His spiritual yuan gently entered his body to help him heal. Hee, you don't need to worry about me. I'm always confident in what I do. You don't need to waste the effort right now. Due to my cultivation technique, your spiritual yuan can't help me heal, said Long Chen. Having entered the nether passage realm, his body essentially contained its own cosmos. His 108,000 astral spaces were fully connected with his 6 stars. They had their own ability to help him recover. As for the old man's spiritual yuan, it was true that Long Chen could absorb it, but it was like a bucket of water on a burning cart in his current condition. It wasn't enough for anything. Long Chen's divine ring slowly revolved as he absorbed energy from heaven and earth. His astral spaces were slowly recovering. Having endured Sovereign Mo Li's attacks, they had reached the verge of collapse. Later on, he had absorbed the heavenly Tao rune and successfully advanced to the nether passage realm, giving him control of life and death energy. But his astral spaces had not yet had a chance to recover. With the battle finally over, he quickly absorbed energy. Once his 108,000 astral spaces were recovered, they could provide him with practically limitless energy. Cloud came flying over with Meng Qi, Chu Yao, Tangwana, Yijiqiu, and Dong Mingyu on her back. What happened? Asked Meng Qi. They had received the news and came rushing over with Cloud, while the others were slaughtering the leftovers of the Kunpeng race. It's a good thing you came. We have to hurry over to the yin-yang world, said Long Chen. He, Chu Jianying, the old man, Li Tianxian, and some of the seniors of the Martial Heaven Alliance jumped onto Cloud's back. Cloud flapped her wings, and the void twisted. They shot through the air, the light twisting around them due to how fast they were going. They couldn't even see the outside world clearly. The Martial Heaven Alliance's seniors sighed in amazement. The cloud-chasing heaven-swallowing sparrow race's reputation for being #1 in speed was not unearned. The void suddenly untwisted, and they saw the world around them. In just a few breaths' time, they had reached the entrance to the yin-yang world. However, they saw that this area was a complete mess. The earth had been torn asunder, with lava still bursting out of the ground. A bloody scent hung in the air. The sky was dusky with black and white ripples still clashing. This was the result of life and death energy. This is the result of fourth step nether passage experts going all out. It seems that Elder Long and the others have taken action, said Chu Jianyi. The aura of the sovereign seal has completely vanished. The blood race unleashed a full-power assault to exhaust its final shred of power. We were tricked by the blood race. They pretended to seem weak, as if the martial heaven continent had an advantage over them. By doing so, they made us overconfident. The moment we relaxed, they took advantage to break through our defenses. But why are they all gone? If the sovereign seal is broken, a giant army of them should have charged through already. But I don't see or sense any of them, noticed Li Tianxian. We must have been too late. The battle's already over. So quickly. Long Chen didn't feel that this was possible. They had arrived in just a moment, so how could the blood race's army already be gone? This battlefield is strange. Li Tianxian examined the surroundings and shook his head. The earth quivered slightly. An explosive sound came from an extremely great distance. That direction, isn't it Devil Spirit Mountain? Long Chen suddenly had a bad feeling. He jumped back onto Cloud's back. Let's go. They rushed over to Devil Spirit Mountain, only to see Elder Long and another Heaven Elder staring gloomily at the Sovereign Seal in front of them. The Sovereign Seal was now infected by black blood. Fiendish runes flowed on top of it. When they arrived, Elder Long sighed, "We were careless. 37 Peak Nether Passage experts have joined forces to destroy the Sovereign Seal. They even left a demonic blood curse on it, corroding it. Devil Spirit Mountain Sovereign Seal should have lasted for years, but now, it probably won't be long before it breaks apart. This is adding to the calamity which has struck the continent." Chu Jianying shook her head dismally. Elder Long said, "It's worse than that. Do you not see that there are only 7 corpses of the blood race that we killed here?" Only then did Long Chen and the others notice the corpses. They were wrapped in white and black chains. Their auras were frightening, but they were already dead. 2 against 7, they had annihilated their opponents. That meant that the power of Elder Long and the other Heaven Elders had to be shocking. Although we killed them, they achieved their goal. They were just sacrificial pawns, sighed the other Heaven Elder. You mean the others? Long Chen stared. Elder Long nodded. Yes, they split into 3, with the others going to the ancient battlefield and resentful Death City. Just at that moment, the 2 Heaven Elders' tablets flashed again. They exchanged a glance and couldn't help sighing. Clearly, the same thing had befallen those 2 places as well. The Heaven Elder waved his hand, gathering the corpses of the blood race. Elder Long said, "Things are serious now. The blood race has always been brainless before, but they actually came up with such a scheme, catching us off guard. We'll need to discuss this with the Lord Venerate. As for the reward for you from the divine families, you don't need to worry about it. The true dark era is about to come. This might be your final chance to breathe. Cherish it well." Elder Long nodded to Chu Jianying and the others before leaving with the other Heaven Elder. The Dragon Blood Legion had returned from seclusion. The Kunpeng race's ancestral lands had been destroyed by heavenly tribulation. A heavenly tribulation had manifested a sovereign. Long Chen had killed Pengzi, charged into the corrupt god cemetery, cut off Tian Xiezi's leg, and exterminated the Kunpeng race. Every single one of these matters was enough to shake the martial heaven continent and should have been the most popular gossip for a long time. However, when news about the sovereign seals around Devil Spirit Mountain, the ancient battlefield, and resentful Death City spread, no one was in the mood to chat. They all knew that the true tribulation was about to come. When the terrifying races from Devil Spirit Mountain, the ancient battlefield, and resentful Death City were added to the blood race of the Yin-Yang world, how could the continent survive? Every time the Dark Eras had come, even with sovereigns present, only 1/10 of the continent's experts survived. Most importantly, during those eras with the sovereigns, they had only been against one invading race at a time. After driving them back, they sealed the entrances to those worlds, preserving the continent's safety. Now though, the Yin-Yang world, the Devil Spirit Mountain, the ancient battlefield, and the mythic resentful Death City seals had all been broken. Once the races from the other side attacked, would there still be any hope for the continent? People felt like the world had lost its color. Past tribulations had had sovereigns to protect them, but now there wasn't a single person who possessed the disposition of a sovereign. None of the heavenly geniuses of the world met the criteria to be a sovereign after all this time, meaning it was very likely that there would be no sovereign in this era. A dark era with no sovereign signified the end of the continent. Some cultivators had lost their drive to get stronger. What was the point? With a sovereign present, the past tribulations had still resulted in only a tenth of the continent's experts surviving. Now, for worlds were about to attack on an unprecedented scale. Unless 4 sovereigns appeared at once, there was no chance the continent could survive. Their only hope rested on the shoulders of the divine families, but even that hope was extremely dismal. Could the divine families be even stronger than the sovereigns? That didn't seem likely. However, as the rest of the continent's people despaired, the Martial Heaven Alliance remained cool-headed. Others were afraid because they had nothing to rely on. But they had Long Chen. Long Chen had advanced to the Nether Passage realm and crushed 3 peak heavenly geniuses to the point that one was killed, one fled, and one had suffered an amputation. He had even fought a sovereign and the corrupt emperor. Even in the youth of the sovereigns, they probably hadn't had such achievements. Long Chen was viewed as the hope of the righteous path, unifying them to an even greater degree. After 3 days, Long Chen recovered 50% of his combat power. His astral spaces had fully recovered, but the rest of his body would need at least 10 more days. This battle had left behind quite a few hidden wounds in his body that were taking a particularly long time to heal. "Boss, a disciple from Mo Gate has arrived," reported a Dragonblood warrior. Long Chen had the disciple brought in. "How is that little fellow Mo Yen?" asked Long Chen. "My family's young master. He has yet to successfully advance to Nether Passage. It's unknown whether he's alive or dead," said that disciple, his eyes red. Long Chen's expression instantly changed. "You don't know if he's alive or dead?" Long Chen's heart shook. What exactly is going on? The disciple from Mo Gate said, "The young master has yet to come out of seclusion from attacking the Nether Passage realm. His body remains in a quasi-dead state." "What about his soul stone?" "The soul stone is still fine." Hearing that the soul stone was fine, Long Chen relaxed slightly. That meant that Mo Yen hadn't failed. It was just that even after all this time, he had yet to pass. "The family head wished to inform you of this. It wasn't that the young master didn't want to help you this time," said the disciple. Long Chen shook his head. It seemed that the current family head of the Mo family was not Mo Yen's grandfather, otherwise, he wouldn't say such a thing. Long Chen knew that Mo Yen would have his own reasons since he hadn't shown up. He wouldn't go thinking such petty things. However, it also didn't seem that Long Chen would be able to help him. Ming Zongyue had said that the reason they had entered her netherworld was because she had set it up that way. She had meddled with the laws. The only ones from the Martial Heaven continent that had entered the netherworld that Ming Zongyue administered were the Dragonblood Legion. This was why they hadn't encountered anyone else from the Marital Heaven continent inside the netherworld. Right now, he couldn't even send a message to Ming Zongyue. Even if he did return to the netherworld, he wouldn't necessarily enter her territory. Ming Zongyue had said that there were as many netherworlds as there were stars in the sky. She was only in charge of one. The reason he was able to be brought over to her world was because of the karma between them due to their past relationship. However, Mo Yen wasn't in the area that Ming Zongyue administered. She wouldn't be able to investigate even if Long Chen could send word. Right now, the only one who could help Mo Yen was Mo Yen himself. Long Chen comforted the disciple, telling him that Mo Yen had definitely encountered a problem, but the fact that he was still alive meant that he was currently breaking out of that crisis. Furthermore, Long Chen's intuition was telling him that Mo Yen wouldn't die so easily. The disciple left and Dong Mingyu came in. The two of them exchanged a smile. Long Chen held Dong Mingyu's hand and they walked out together. Boom! A giant set of gates were blasted apart by a punch. Long Chen and Dong Mingyu walked through. They had just entered when space twisted and one figure after another appeared. Long Chen, Dong Mingyu. The leader of those people was an old man whose heart sank upon seeing the two of them. That old man was the Bloodkill Hall's master, Zhongxiang, and this place was the headquarters of the Bloodkill Hall. It was completely secret, but as the divine daughter, the Bloodkill Hall's secret headquarters was no secret to Dong Mingyu. "What are you doing?" demanded Zhongxiang. "Theoretically, I should be coming here today to destroy your Bloodkill Hall and kill all of you. But Mingyu did come from the Bloodkill Hall, and her cultivation comes from you. So don't worry, I won't kill you today." Mingyu came to pay her respects to the killing god to settle things with him. "In the future, the Bloodkill Hall will have nothing to do with us," said Long Chen indifferently. Zhongxiang was a third-step nether passage expert. His assassination arts would give even a fourth-step nether passage expert a headache. But Long Chen didn't view him as a threat. A traitor of the killing god has the face to return and pay respects to him? A voice rang out in the air. Dong Mingyu pointed a single finger. The void twisted, and a figure came falling down. It was a very young disciple. His head had been pierced, and his sneer still hung on his face. Even before his death, he hadn't sensed the danger. "Those who don't wish to die should leave. Those who wish to die can stay," said Dong Mingyu. She was even more direct than Long Chen. After that, she pulled Long Chen in. "You." Zhongxiang's expression changed, but in the face of the divine daughter Dong Mingyu who had advanced to the nether passage realm, even he didn't have the courage to stop her. They were both assassins, but she had the power of the killing god. That put a sense of extreme pressure on him. As for that unlucky fellow she had just killed, it was a warning. That attack had contained god power. An assassin who lived on the edge of a knife was extremely sensitive to any danger, but Dong Mingyu had killed that person without him sensing anything. That was due to the god energy of the killing god, which was especially effective against the followers of the killing god. That was the absolute authority bestowed to a divine daughter. The most inexplicable thing to Zhongxiang was that despite betraying the killing god hadn't unleashed any divine punishment on her and even allowed her to retain his god energy. In the end, Zhongxiang stepped back, opening a path for her. "You can enter, but Long Chen dash, I'll go wherever I want to. If you have the guts, then come and try to stop me. It just so happens that you'll give me an excuse to wipe the Bloodkill Hall out of existence," snorted Long Chen. Long Chen very much disliked the Bloodkill Hall, viewing them as even worse than the professional assassins within the Phoenix Cry Empire. At least those assassins had some morals. They had 3 no's: no killing the pregnant, the ill, or children. However, the ones known as the Martial Heaven Continent's #1 assassins organization had no taboos. For money, they could do anything. As long as they were paid, they didn't care who they killed. Back then, they had sent Dong Mingyu as a 3- or 4-year-old child to assassinate Long Chen, drawing his greatest wrath. If it weren't for Dong Mingyu, he would be destroying the Bloodkill Hall today. It was Dong Mingyu who wished for Long Chen to not do that today. No matter how it was put, she came from the Bloodkill Hall. The reason she was with Long Chen now was because of them. Perhaps that was a kind of fate. The Bloodkill Hall had done so much evil and were now doomed. This could be considered their own karma. It probably wouldn't be long before they fully vanished from this world, so Long Chen didn't mind letting them off as a favor to Dong Mingyu. However, if they really wanted to die and further provoked him, then he wouldn't mind killing more of them. Regretfully, the Bloodkill Hall's people weren't as tough as he had hoped. After the first was killed by Dong Mingyu, the others shut their mouths. Dong Mingyu led the way through a large palace, and they arrived at an underground passageway. At the end of the path, they found a small transportation formation. "Who goes there?" The voices of 4 old men rang through the air when they arrived. Dong Mingyu waved her hand, and 4 heads flew through the air. Nonchalantly, she stepped onto the transportation formation with Long Chen, saying, "These black and white-robed fellows are the wildly fanatic elders, the most loyal dogs of the killing god. They aren't under the administration of the Hall Master and even have the authority to replace the Hall Master with a new one if they wish to. They've been brainwashed to the point that anything they view as blasphemy to the killing god would result in immediate death, even if it was the current hall master. Brainwashing really is amazing. It turns people into bigoted madmen. Long Chen shook his head. The transportation formation activated, and they arrived in a dark and gloomy world. This was most likely somewhere underground. There was a long passageway, with dark red flames flickering along the walls. Long Chen examined the stone walls. There were some ancient carvings left there. Within them, he saw a man holding a blade in front of many experts. Sometimes his blade stabbed right through their foreheads, while sometimes it cut through their throats. Sometimes he was dragging their heads. "This is the killing god?" asked Long Chen. "Yes. But the killing god has been beautified in those carvings," said Dong Mingyu, her expression a bit odd. "Beautified?" The two of them quickly reached the end of the passageway. At the end was another palace, one that was mostly empty. There was simply a throne with an old man on it. His white hair was balding at the center, and he was heavy-set. "He is also the killing god?" asked Long Chen with some disbelief. "Yes." Dong Mingyu nodded. Long Chen almost coughed up blood. How did a lecherous fatty end up being a handsome young man in those carvings? They say that this sculpture is of the moment the killing god condensed his Tao fruit. As for the murals and other statues, they're from when he was young. Dong Mingyu shrugged. "And people believe that nonsense? They don't even look like the same person," said Long Chen speechlessly. "Hee, that's what I've always thought too. But they said that when the killing god was young, he was handsome enough to bewitch others. Later he had the fortune to condense a god fruit, resulting in his looks becoming like this as a warning to others. However, those who can see the sculpture must have made great contributions to the killing god, so only a few people have seen it," said Dong Mingyu. "So the killing god is actually a lecherous fatty but has been beautified to such an extent by those bootlickers. Aren't they just lying to themselves?" Long Chen shook his head. "Who dares to make a racket in the killing god's palace?" Long Chen and Dong Mingyu had barely entered the palace when a furious shout came from within. Inside, they saw 8 elders wearing black and white robes glaring at them. They held staves in their hands. "Kneel and receive 40 whips for your disrespect to the killing god dash." The first elder was slapped in the face before he could finish speaking. He spun through the air as Long Chen sneered, "Did that wake you up? Who dares to talk big to Master Long?" You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.